Hello, everybody. Saturday, June 10th, 11:10 a.m. 10 minutes late. I apologize. We are going to talk about PFF today, Phoenix Fan Fusion 2023. We already have a guest here who can share his experience with it. But of course, first, before we do anything, very quickly, I'm going to run through 3 books from the library. Because if I don't, Dee Dee Willingham, she'll threaten me with bodily harm over social media. So 3 randomly picked. First, I have my Topps Mars Attacks collection. Anyone who's very familiar, especially with the earliest days of DvsM, knows that Mars Attacks was a pretty heavy influence. This is one of the classics that just happened to open to it. We have a Martian vaporizing a little boy's dog. Those Martians. Oh, those Martians. Anyway, it's what I especially love about this. So it reproduces all the cards. There's some additional material in there. I think it actually, it comes with some of the new generation ones, which honestly, I don't, no shade on anyone who might have worked on these, but I like the originals. Like, it's the new ones are almost too nice. Part of the charm of the originals to me is they weren't particularly well done. I don't know. But anyway, they give you a few of the new ones in there. The cover has that kind of wax paper, like emulates the wrap that the cards would have been in when you bought them. It's just a fun book to go through. It's this is to me the peak of the whole Mars Attacks property. The Burton movie was fine. The new cards are fine. Like the figures are fine, but I kind of like the original Topps cards. Okay. The Serpent and the Rainbow by Wade Davis. Some people might be familiar with the horror movie starring, blanking on the actor's name. The same guy who played the president in Independence Day. I don't remember. And that was like a horror zombie movie. This is the true story. Wade Davis is an ethnobotanist. An ethnobotanist is someone who studies humans' relationships with plants. And he was chasing down the so-called zombie drug in Haiti and trying to unravel what that whole phenomenon was. And it was fascinating stuff. And it actually taught us a lot about different pharmacological effects of different plants that were available down there. It helped unravel a lot of the so-called voodoo lore and mythology that was floating around down there. There were a lot of true accounts of, now I want to be very careful here. When we say like real zombies, of course they're not zombies the way we think of them from pop culture. But what it was an ability to load people up with a certain combination of drugs that created a death-like state. These people, as part of the tradition, would be buried. They would come out of their state. They would be all screwed up from the drugs, and they would be highly suggestible and stumbling around and groggy and weird. And you could, this was like the zombie. When they eventually would come out of it, this was the whole thing they would do down there. Maybe still do. I actually don't keep up on it. Wade Davis is a fascinating person. If you're into anthropology at all, if you're into ethnobotany at all, Wade Davis is fascinating. And one of those people, when you hear him interviewed, seems unnaturally brilliant. Every word that comes out of his mouth, it seems like it was pre-written. He's a real life genius, worth checking out. And then finally, La Hija de Moctezuma, Montezuma's Daughter. This was it's a retro comic by an artist I really love. Not one of my Mount Rushmore artistic influences, but up there, Jesus Blasco. This was, I think, originally published in the 60s. It's kind of my favorite era of comics. It's that, or one of my favorite eras of comics, where you'll see when you see the art style, you can see why. If you've seen a DvsM, you could imagine why I would respond to it. I'm just trying to find a good page. First of all, it's way more traditional, and it doesn't look especially comic booky. It more harkens back to that kind of Prince Valiant era, or Buck Rogers, or Flash Gordon, like this stuff where it's a little more, let's see here. Strong on the life drawing, strong on the faces, strong on the figures. I would just say more, I don't know, for lack of a better term, more adult. This was before the interest in, you know, the superhero comic or the action comic really just exploded. And comics were more, I would say, I love that face, by the way, the one where my middle finger is pointing. This, to me, was part of our era that was more like manga, where it was all ages. It was before companies realized they could make a gazillion more dollars by chasing like the 10 or 12-year-old dollar. I don't know if that's a hot take, but that's just my impression. And I've talked a lot about how my comic knowledge is not as great as almost anyone else I talk to on these streams. Any of the guests that are going to come in, any of the, anyone in my circle. And most of it, well, there were some comics I enjoyed as a kid. And I've talked about like G.I. Joe and Spider-Man and X-Men and stuff like that. Most of my comic knowledge and love came from going through my dad's books. And that was how I developed, again, Prince Valiant, EC comics, stuff like Montezuma's Daughter, like these things that are kind of just 10, 20, 30 years before I was even born. That was sort of what I cut my teeth on. And it developed a taste for comics. And then I started to find my own, like, the Nom comics or again, G.I. Joe or whatever. And I liked those. And then I think it was the 1-2 punch of, it kind of went into the 90s era that I didn't love the look of. No shade on that, only because it didn't really look classic like that. It just looked different. And I was like, well, that's not, I like the kind of classic look. But also that was thing. But then the bigger thing, I think, was I fell head over heels in love with video games. And that sucked. Like, all my pop geek culture attention sort of went to that. And it's only later in life where I was like, okay, what's going on with comics now? And I came back to it. So I missed a middle chunk. That's how I'm accounting for my lack of comic knowledge. There's this middle period of for me, between like 1989, 88, 87, somewhere in there is where I started to check out and didn't circle back until, 15 years ago. Like I was vaguely aware of things that were going on. And if something was really big and got on my radar, maybe I would read it, but I was mostly checked out. So anyway, okay. Let's see here. We got Dee Dee in the chat. There we go. Thank you, Dee Dee. And then I saw Serpent and Rainbow as a kid. Terrified me at the time. Love 1979. Oh, thank you. Hoping the type in the intro makes this extra collectible. Is there a type? Let's see here. Is there a typo in the intro? What type or typo? You have to clarify. Where? What? I need to know. Tell me where. Opie made me tear up having recently had an animal pass. Oh, that's sweet. You know, okay, well, we'll probably talk a little bit about this in a future episode with like an Ask Me Anything about 79, or when I get into the character creation and analysis of Dr. Wagner. But 79 was written very much on the heels of losing 2 pets within about a year of each other. And so that's like, it's soaked into it. And so I appreciate that came through, and I am sorry that you went through that. I know it can be awful. Let me know about that typo. I do not like the sound of that. I want to find that if there is indeed an error in there. There might be for the reprint a correction. Okay. We're going to talk about Phoenix Fan Fusion 2023 today. And appropriately, we have 2 guests who are my table mates at, oh wait, okay, hold on. Is it a double V? Hold on just one sec. I have a copy over here. I mean, I believe you, but now I got to look at it. I have a single V. A hunk of chili size onto his fork. What's the error? What's the error? Chili size. No, chili size is a thing. Is this the regional issue? This came up when I was having people proofread. I had a few proofreaders go like, what the fuck's a chili size? Is that a thing? Oh, yes. Okay. Whew. Chili size is a thing. It's a Southwest thing. DvsM is set in Arizona. Chili size, I'm assuming it's a Southwest thing. Dee, do you know what a chili size is? You're in Texas. Are you familiar with the chili size? Who is and isn't familiar? I'm curious. I knew that it's a very regional. Christopher Runsman. Christopher Runsman did the last pass at 79, and he also questioned like, what are these words? Is this English? Like, what is a chili size? And Mary also is like, how do you carve a hunk of chili? And I was like, no, it's a chili size. It's different. Like, fine. Author intent. It's fine. No, thank you. No, I appreciate it. If anyone ever finds a type, believe me, like I'm nuts about the typos, and I would absolutely correct it for future prints. I'm just relieved, like, no, it's fine. I knew chili size was going to be a stumbling block for the non-Arizonans out there. And I'm willing to, like, that was a calculated, like, some people are not going to know what this means. Maybe they'll Google, I don't know. No. Chili fries. No. Chili size is its own thing. A chili size, for those unfamiliar, and then we're going to bring in our guests. It's an open face burger, so burger with the top off, covered in chili, diced onions, and cheese. You eat it with a fork and a knife because it's like, it would be too, you can't just put that together and eat it. Like, it's a burger covered in chili. It's a chili size. I don't know what that name is. I don't know, but it's an Arizona thing. And someplace you can't get them everywhere. But when I was growing up, you could get them anywhere. Any place that served a burger, you could get a chili size. My source in the DvsM comics, like almost everything else in DvsM, is Arizonan, and he's old Arizonan, so he loves a good chili size. There'll be more of that. We'll circle back. You might even see one in DvsM 6. You might see my source eating a chili size. Okay. Yeah, I think it's sort of like, the only difference is a chili dog, I believe, you can actually pick up and eat. A chili size, there's no, like, that is a fork and knife meal. Like, you're not going to, therefore, that's how you're carving off a hunk of it. You're forking your chili size. All right. Whew. I can't tell you that's like when you're driving and like you have to do a hard stop so you don't run into, like, that's what my heart's doing right now. It's like typo in the intro. Okay. Anyway, let's bring in our guests, my Phoenix Fan Fusion 2023 table mates, the Making Comics duo. If you're not subscribed to the Making Comics podcast, you should be. Scott Lost and Keith Foster. How's it going, guys?
What up?
Sorry for the extended intro.
That was a chili-sized intro.
It was a huge chili. There was a lot of chili-sized business to address.
I was eating it with a fork and knife and everything. So good.
Okay, so you guys are California. Keith, I know you're not originally, but you have been for how long?
Since 2009, so 13 years now.
Okay. Are there chili sizes in California? Are familiar with chili sizes? Is that a thing?
No.
Okay, so
I can also speak on behalf of Texas. I grew up in Houston, Texas, so I never heard of chili size in my 12 years there.
So it might be a very. I would love it if, especially since DvsM, and this is something we'll be circling back to in like learnings from PFF 2023, as DvsM is very much kind of a regional comic. I think it's kind of great that there's this weird regional food in there, chili sizes that maybe nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about.
What were you talking about with Mary, Keith? The thing that's regional to where she's from. It's like a small like hot pot, or not like a pot pie
pasties.
Or something.
Yes, pasties. Pasties from the upper peninsula of Michigan, but not the lower. Right, like
that's right.
Regional to Yoopers.
Right.
Okay,
which, by the way,
like, how do you know all this crap? It's like,
yeah, she was astonished. She was astonished and impressed. Well, yeah. Keith, when you do visit, I'm going to give you the name of Cornish Pasty, which is a chain here in the Phoenix area. Actually, it's, I think, around Arizona. They might have some up north, but very, very good. Very, very good.
Yeah. Okay.
And a good beer selection, by the way.
So, even better.
Nice.
Even better. What are you guys doing today? How's your weekend going?
Well, my birthday was on the 8th, so a couple of days ago at this point. But we have birthday stuff lined up. We went out for dinner yesterday, which was good. Then we watched Into the Spider-Verse, or Through the Spider-Verse, right?
Across the whatever it is. I have not seen
Across the Spider-Verse. There we go.
Okay, so we were talking about that all con. We were all expressing disbelief that the first one, which was way better than we expected, and we couldn't even believe how good it was as good as it was.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now everyone's saying the second one's even better, which is also, once again, we're like, that can't be. How could that be? That can't be.
It was. But it's not overwhelmingly good. But
okay.
Better. It's not overwhelmingly better.
Okay.
It is better.
Okay.
And it's kind of like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but like, as the opening stuff was going on, I was like, yeah, this is dope. More of the same, like, but more of the awesome same, right? As the first one was. I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like, it's, and then as it goes on and on, it's just the visual stimulant is overwhelmingly good. I was just like, I love all of this. And like, as an artist, my brain's going like, as we'll talk about, it is very important for me to draw something from this for the next convention that I do,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
the last print I had, the Miles one, did so well at Phoenix Fan Fusion that it only makes sense to do something for this. So that's actually what I was working on last night. We got home at probably like 11:30ish,
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm staying up and drawing. Like, I have an idea of something I want to do. So I was like, let me just kind of block it out real quick. Let me do some color samples, like some tests and stuff to see what I like. So I think I found the palette that I wanted for it. And
Yeah.
it feels really strong. I think it pairs really well with my Miles print as well. So
Okay.
yeah, that's what I was doing. And then while you're doing your intro, I was working on that more. So it's fun.
So will
It
it
looks good.
be in kind of the visuals, in keeping with the visual style of the movie?
Yes, and definitely in the visual styles of like my first print, where it's kind of like I have the line art of Miles, and then
Mhm.
kind of the background. It's like there's no holding lines. It's just kind of like shapes and stuff. So very much in the vein of the movie, and it looks good. I think it's a good pairing. I think people, if they do buy one, they'll probably want to buy both,
Yeah.
and so that will be very beneficial to me at shows. So
Of
fingers
course.
crossed. But yeah, the
Yeah.
visual stimulant of that movie, man, you're gonna love it.
Oh, I mean, I thought the story and all the character stuff worked perfectly in the first one anyway. But yeah, the both the art and the sound and music in that
Yeah.
first one. I mean, that was. I'm just quickly inventorying in my head. It's for sure, I think, the most stunning animated movie I've ever seen. Like, I
Right.
can't think of, and there's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, that's a great list. There's a lot of very good movies in there that look amazing, but that one in particular, especially as someone who does not love CG animation, like I have always preferred 2D. And if we had to do a top 5 animated features, I bet my other 4.
I'd be willing to be on that episode.
We should do that.
Yeah.
Actually, that'd be a fun one. But I bet my
One
other
would be
4
like the Dave Chappelle making the band. I would be like Dylon, 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 and Dylon. Into the spiders
Just
hole,
one
the
over
top
and
5
over again.
spots.
Well, I feel
Yeah.
like at least 3 and maybe 4 of my top 5 would be traditional hand drawn.
Oh,
I think if there was another 3D that snuck in, it would probably be Incredibles.
okay.
But just because I love the look of it, like it had that kind of, I don't know, mid-century modern thing. You know, it looked maybe like it had been, if they could have done that in the 50s, that's what it would have looked like. But no, all the rest, it'd be like Akira and, I mean, it would be all these 2D things. Like, I generally don't love how 3D looks. It's been always my big objection to Clone Wars. As much as some people love Clone Wars, it's like, I can't look at it. I just don't like how it looks. And
Mine would be the story and everything about it. Going back to
yes,
really just shit on them real quick.
I know.
The thing I'll say about the Into the Spider-Verse, the first one, and this one, I think it was the perfect bridge between animation and comic books. It was a movie that took advantage of both so well, and just in a different kind of way than we've ever seen. Like the first comic book movie that I remember seeing that was like, oh, they're kind of doing something here that's reminiscent of comic books. I think it was the Ang Lee Hulk, where he was making panel and panel stuff, and I was like, oh, I see what he's doing. Like, that's pretty clever,
Yeah, he did. Mm-hmm. It's funny you bring that up. I was thinking about that movie just the other day, thinking like, you know what? I think that's wildly underrated. I actually really, and especially going back to it, just for the transitions, the cuts, the weird little winks at comics. I thought it was really visually fun. Yeah, it's a little weird, and the mocap performance. Ang Lee deciding that he's going to do the mocap for the Hulk was a weird choice. It never
the color too, like the color of Hulk. It was kind of like a weird green.
It's like this green for our names here. Like, it's that kind of intense.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work, but I think I like it better than the Ed Norton one. I think, like, that movie, I think it's a more interesting movie, where I think the Ed Norton one to me is I loved for the Ed Norton one, that first 30 or 40 minutes of him in Brazil, that kind of was like the old TV show where it's him kind of trying to lay low and running into every bully who's like, you know, like, and you're waiting for this bomb to go off. Like, I loved all that. I was in for that. And he changes.
I love the fact that the intro basically told the whole origin.
The whole origin.
There you go. Everyone knows the origins to these movies for the most part, right? So it's just, especially if you've done, you know, the Ang Lee one, it's like, okay, it's not connected, but more than likely everyone's seen it, so we don't need to do that. How do we take care of that? And they did it in the intro, and it's like, yeah, that's all you ever need. It kind of sums it all up.
Well, and Hulk is one of those ones, a little bit like Spider-Man, where now if the hardcore comic people are watching this on the replay, just stay with me for a second. Does it really matter? Like, I think an argument can be made with the Hulk. It's like, something happened and he's a Hulk now, and let's go. Like, does it really, like, what are we getting out of watching that happen? If it can all be referenced, if it can all, like, this thing, like, all that matter, to me, the interesting thing about the Banner character is he's on the run and he's got this kind of curse. Like, he's, you know, he's a Marvel werewolf. He's just wandering around trying to avoid hurting people.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, like, yeah.
What does it matter how it happened? Like, it's an interesting bit of trivia. It's an interesting bit of, like, world building, but it has makes no material difference in the story you're telling. So why waste a half hour?
That's kind of like Into the Spider-Verse with Miles' origin. Like, it's like he's doing stuff and then it happens, you know? It's like, oh, I'm painting this mural with my uncle and then I got bit. And we're just like, oh, cool. Like, it wasn't all revolved around it. It wasn't building up to it. It was just something that happened to him, and then he got these powers.
Yeah, you're not sitting there like this looking at your watch because, like, you know, child Bruce Wayne is going to see a movie with his parents. It's like, yeah, you know, yeah, you're watching him do character stuff, and you're learning about him. So when the spider bite happens, it's kind of like, oh, okay, you know, it like that. You don't realize that's where you're going. It's not like
I would say too, like. I think with Miles Morales, okay, so my stance on storytelling is like in medias res, like none of that. You know, what you were saying, Gary, like there was a time when I remember talking to people about how I didn't like first superhero films, first ones, because you knew the first 30 minutes were just going to be like, here's his origin, here's her origin, here we go again, right? And for me, it's always like, no, you jump right in and then we'll figure it out later. And the weird thing is that, like, a lot of comics were like that in the 80s. You know, you were talking about the era of comics you missed. You know, I got into comics in 84, stayed around until about 86, 87, jumped out, and then jumped back in like 90, you know, and that was common. Like, I was a fan of this comic called Vigilante. And I think it served as a template where, like, you jumped in and, like, issue 7 was the origin issue, you know, and it was like, hell yeah, man, you know, get me in there, give me a story, and then we'll get to the origin. Yeah. But I think for Miles, it kind of works too, because Miles hasn't been in the pop culture gestalt for 60, 70, 80 years. So I think in that case, it probably helps. Like, oh, this is how he got his powers.
You need to introduce the audience to this. You need to introduce the audience to this person. It's not Peter Parker. It's not Bruce Banner. It's not Clark Kent. We know all those. It's not Bruce Wayne. We know all
exactly. No more Bruce Wayne in the alley. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Exactly. Oh, and the pearls breaking and scattering on the alley. Get the fuck out of here. That's enough.
Yeah.
I think the way they handled it is, like, perfectly done. And because Miles' story is such a personal story, it's a very family-oriented story. It's just like, he was hanging out with his family when the thing went down, so it kind of just made sense in the flow of the events that was going on. So it's like really well handled. And it's funny that you guys mentioned, like, origin stuff, because Second Shift kind of just jumps straight in too. And, like, we kind of have that same plan where, like, we'll tell everyone's origins and stuff and, like, why they're doing this, but we want to get into the action. Yeah. And, like, that was actually a critique from my editor, was like, I don't know why anyone's doing anything. And I'm like, well, they're doing cool shit and we'll get there. But it's just like, yeah, but when, you know, and so it's like, it's a fair critique, like, when you get into it. But I think I was in the same headspace as you guys. It's like, Yeah, we'll get to the origin later. The origins are cool. Everyone loves origins, but I kind of want to jump into the action and get things going.
Mhm.
I also, like Keith said, I'm very much an in media kind of guy where I remember, I think George Lucas is the first person I encountered this with. He had said, ideally, you want to start your story as late as possible. So you look at what the story is. It's like, where is the latest point I could drop the audience in? I tend to, like, obviously DvsM is not structured the same way as a superhero comic, but I do think of like where, I don't need to see the Men in Black getting in the car heading to Wilcox. Like, let's put them 5 minutes from Wilcox. Or I don't need to see, I don't need to see Jenny get arrested. Let's see her in the cell. Like, let's get it going. What is this necessary? Is this helping me? No. Okay, then let's start 2 hours later then, or a day later, or whatever. Especially if you're doing a stupidly long comic like I am, like, I'm not going to burn 10 more pages, just setting up,
Right.
No. Can we just drop you in the middle of this? Okay. I wanted to recap Fan Fusion. I have 2 slides, what I thought was good about it, what I thought was bad about it. And since both of you are here, I'll be eager to get your thoughts, reactions, disagreements, whatever, it's pretty straightforward. But anyway, for anyone who's just tuning in, last weekend we were at Phoenix Fan Fusion 2023. We shared a table. We had a nice corner spot, thanks to Scott bringing one of his tables. We had like a literal corner, and it was Scott on one end, Keith kind of manning the corner, and me on the other end. We had good traffic, I would say. I thought it was a good spot. We had a really solid
better location than the previous year.
Yes.
I think we were literally just the opposite. I think it was the same exact row cluster. We were just on the other side of it, and that was so much better.
I'm going to try and I'm going to do a quick sketch of what it was.
Man, you got slides. You're doing sketches. Like, where's?
They're not complicated slides because when you upload a deck to StreamYard, any kind of like unusual, when I say unusual, any font other than Calibri, it will revert it to Calibri. It will screw up your layout. Like, so it's very bare bones. This is not the level of quality and presenting I do at my day job. Let me tell you. Okay, so I just want to show people kind of what we had.
It's kind of like a rectangle shape. That's not a rectangle, is it? But like,
I mean, it's rectangle-ish.
Rectangle adjacent. See, and I'm like getting fucked up by this reverse camera. So, but like, we were on this side of it. I'll let Gary do it.
The red area is our corner, and these are all walkways. Like, this is where people are walking.
On Etsy. Gary, this sketch is available on Etsy.
I'll sign it. Yeah. I'll remark this, whatever you need. So we had tons of traffic. Now, I think last year it was a little more like this, where we didn't have, it wasn't like a intersection. We were at like a T. Yes.
So we were on,
we didn't have as much foot traffic.
We were on the opposite side. We were here.
Yes.
We were on this table, and then this side was so much better. Like, just that little strip.
I was very pleased with our placement. So that's something I don't think I listed in my good and bad of. So here, let's add this in here.
Oh, look at this.
So there we go.
Fancy.
Bare bones. You get right the hell out of here.
What? It is bare bones.
This is a great slide. This is a great.
So here's the good. At least this is my good, and I would like to hear your guys' good. First of all, sold a bunch of books. I was very happy with the number of books I sold. I guess I have no reason not to disclose. There's no reason to be cagey about it. I sold a total of, actually, now try to refrain from the silly giggles, 69 books. Just say, everyone settle down. Hey, kids, Happened to be 69. I think I told you guys
68 were actually what you sold, but the 69 was free.
I had told you guys 68, and the reason I thought it was 68 was because I looked at how much money I made. I knew how much I was charging a book, and it worked out to 68. But I had forgotten that there was one guy, he was right on the fence, and I told him, like, if you come back tomorrow, because he was one of the scenes that's like, I'll be back. And I was like, if you do come back, I will give you a good deal. Because I hate the, like, I'll be back and you never see these people again. We've all talked about that. So I was like, if you come back tomorrow and I remember you, I will make it worth the trip back. And he's like, all right. So he came back and he was like, okay, so what are you going to give me? So I basically gave him $10 off a complete set of books. So I actually, in fact, I had sold 69 books. 69 books is great. Like, I can't complain about that for 3 days.
Great number.
Didn't you have one also? I think it was Saturday, and you're like, first sell of the day Saturday, I'll give you all 3 for 20.
Oh, maybe I did. I do remember
that you saying that specifically, but I didn't know if it was the same guy or not.
You're right. You're right. No, that's different. So I sold 70. So yeah, again, 70 books. That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah. Can't feel bad about that. And as I'm putting in my note here, to new and old customers. So there's people I introduced DvsM to. That's great. But what's also fun, and I'm always kind of shocked I can remember the faces. There are people who find me every con I do, especially if I have something new, and they'll buy like whatever the latest book is, and I recognize them on sight. I don't know their name, I don't know who they are, but it's like it's that guy. I remember that guy, you know, and they remember me. They come up and they're like, hey, and they'll say really nice. They'll be like, I really love the last one. I heard you got a new one. Oh, cool. They'll get it. Like, and it's these guys, these people that I have this weird kind of quasi relationship with, where it's like I totally would spot them on the street. I have no idea what their name is. I don't know anything about them.
I hate when people do the, hey, do you remember me?
Oh,
I'm like, guys, come on.
Please
don't do
this.
I
meet a lot of people. Yes. It's a long weekend, guys. I'm meeting hundreds of people.
But I do have the same thing where there's certain fans. I don't remember everyone, but there are certain fans. I'm like, I know this person's face. I've definitely interacted with them before. Yeah.
Yes. Which is cool. Like, I have to admit, I'm inventorying to decide if this is really how I feel, and it is. I think it's my favorite kind of interaction at these things, is when I see a return. And I love it when friends come by. You know, that's great. I mean, it makes me feel very supported. And, you know, if someone even if they're not buying anything, even if they're just coming by, it's like, we heard you're at the con, like, how's it going? Cool. Like, that's great. But I think for sure my favorite interaction is when it's this return customer. They read other books, they liked them, now they want the new one. And I don't even know who they are. They're not doing it out of personal loyalty. They're not doing it out of, it would be nice if I said hi. Like, they're doing it because they're into it and they're seeking you out every time. That's always a thrill.
We had a family come, and they went to Las Vegas, the Las Vegas convention that Keith and I just did, Amazing Con. And I remembered her because she said she's like part Filipino. And so, because I was pitching my books and stuff, I think I had a Filipino hat on. I think that's why she had brought it up. And I was like, oh, just so you know, all of my books have Filipino characters in them. And they had left. I think they had come for, like, I participated in 2 things. There was like a scavenger hunt, and there was Star Wars Day. And so, like, I was giving away free stuff for both. And they came by, they grabbed the free Star Wars trading card or whatever it was. And I was like, hey, do you mind if I talk to you about my books while you're here? And they said, sure. So I told her about everything and, you know, the Filipino thing. And they were like, that sounds really interesting. You know, like, well, thank you very much. And like, it was a very long interaction, and like, okay, thank you very much. And they left. And I was like, man, I thought I had something there. And I was like, man, this whole free giveaway thing that I've been doing, it's not been paying off, which they both did. And they were one of them. They came back at the end of the day. She goes, hey, I've been thinking about your books ever since you told them about me. Like, I want to get them. So they ended up getting some books from me, which was really nice. And then, so we saw them at Phoenix Fan Fusion, and they already had my stuff. So I was just like, oh, check out these guys' books. And then I think the husband ended up picking up all 3 books from you.
I might remember who you're talking about, and yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. The other thing that was, and this is interesting, and I don't know why. I don't think it ever happened before, but it definitely happened this time. Maybe it's partly because I had a new book. In all my posting on social media about FanFusion tomorrow, come see me. FanFusion day 1, FanFusion day 2, whatever. My Etsy sales took a bump too, where I was like, and I remember that first day especially, I was like, I haven't sold anything here yet, but I've sold 2, like I have 2 new orders on Etsy. That was sort of an interesting, kind of nice, good thing too, that somehow, I think it reminded people like, oh, he's got a new book and I'm not going to FanFusion, but I should buy it, you know, and it reminded them that things are for sale. So that was kind of a fun surprise. Was all I had a lot of it, and I still like following. I've had Etsy activity, and I haven't really drilled down into the addresses to see like, are these people who maybe bought a book at the convention and now want to get others, or are these people who are just reminded by all my posting, or what? But so that was, I'm filing that under the good as well. Another good, of course, I get to hang out with you guys. That's always fun. And it's, to me, not only is it fun, it's educational a little bit to see. I don't know. I mean, the whole reason, not the whole reason, a big part of why I even do these streams is it's interesting to compare and contrast work styles. It's interesting to compare and contrast sales approaches. It's interesting to compare and contrast how you like to set up your table. You know, like it's just kind of interesting to see like how other people are doing it, and it sometimes gives you ideas, or it, at the very least, it's kind of like when you get feedback, it allows you to justify why you do it the way you're doing it.
Yeah, it's like cloud gathering, data gathering. You know, that's something I did really early on, and I still do it a little bit, not as much. But when I would do conventions, I would, especially during the dead times, I would stand around and I would look at other people's setups, especially the people that had constant crowds. I'm like, what's drawing people to that table? I'm very curious. And like one of the things I noticed early on was big signage. Like, this costs this much, because there's a certain percentage of the comic crowd that are complete introverts. They're out of their comfort zone by even being at the convention around that many people. So they want as little interaction as they have to have. So I was like, hey, that's a good idea. I'm going to put signs on everything so people don't have to come up and ask how much stuff cost because of that certain population.
I firmly believe they should never, a customer should never have to talk to you unless it's at the point of, I want to buy something. Like I was astonished that some people don't put out demo books for them to read. Like when I did my quick head count, like going around to see, which is something we'll get to, like how many other indie comic people are here. Some people, they're all bagged, or they're all under, like, you know, it's like, well,
it's no good.
I need to see what you're, it's a visual medium, man. Like I need to see it. I need to decide if I want to read this. So it's like, I try, like I have always, I think a minimum is you got to have your prices out very clearly, like legible, understandable. This is how much things are going for. And trashed demo books out that they can pick up. And even then I found so often I had to tell people that, like they'd ask for, I'd be given the pitch, they'd be thinking about it, and they'd be like, huh, and then they would ask like, can I look at this? And you probably, Keith especially, probably heard me say a million times, like, that's what they're there for. Absolutely. You know, like pick them up. And like sometimes you'd see people looking, and I would have, even before they asked, it's like, you can look through that if you know, that's what that's for. Like I expect you to want to be able to page through it before you decide you're going to part with $10. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know, but also, and this is, and I want to say this as sensitively, broach the topic as sensitively as possible, but leaping off something you said, Scott, you are dealing with generally a higher than normal percentage of very introverted people who, I think it's interesting. You think about the approach too. Like this is why I've never loved the Carnival Barker approach for a con. if for no other reason, then you're going to scare people off. Like, that's too much. It's just like they're drinking from a fire hose if you're coming at them like that. Like, you kind of, I think I said to Keith at one point, I have more of like a lure the stray cat approach, where it's kind of like, it's okay.
You're like, come hither.
Yeah, if you want to come look, there's some stuff here. I won't bother you. I won't make eye contact. Like, I mean, it's just like, come here. I'm not going to put you in a cage. I'm not going to, it's all right. It's all right. With a lot of them, like, you need that in a big way. Like, you kind of have to feel out who you're talking to and what level. You have to try to match their energy a little bit. Mm-hmm. And Keith might have noticed with me, sometimes someone would come up and they would feel very like big and out and energetic, and I would try to like rise to that. I'd be like, I'd get kind of into it. But then there'd other people where I would kind of lean back and be like, yeah, I don't know if you have any questions, and kind of just let them do their thing, because I just got a vibe of like, I don't want to scare this person off.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, I think I refined my pitch a little bit.
I want to stay on hung out with Scott and Keith for a second.
Yeah,
that was great. Number one, thank you for hosting us. We truly appreciate that. Like, it was like, number one, it's a giant relief, because when you're doing shows that are out of state, you have to worry about multiple things. Number one is table. Number two is travel, and number three is where you're staying. And so, like, the fact that we were able to stay with you, that was like, it's something Keith and I talk about a lot, is those are the big three. Like, those are the big three obstacles you have to deal with when doing conventions, because the amount of money that you need to just break even is just so much higher. And so that was a huge relief on us for sure. And like, gas wise, my car's really good on gas. Maybe not the mechanics of it at the moment, but which I can get into.
We'll get that when we get to the bad. When we get to the bad, you'll have one. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And the fact that, you're someone we talk to on a very regular basis, like maybe not every day, but maybe every day.
Pretty regular.
And so like, the fact that we were able to hang out with you and like just kind of enjoy each other's company, try your food spots. Your Mexican food spot was very good, by the way. So we're going to put that on the good.
There we go.
And then also that beer store you brought me to.
Yes.
Also on the good side of it. It was cool picking up some stuff that was local. I got a couple of local things, and then just a couple of things that I hadn't seen before. And I actually had one of them on the last pod we recorded. And that's what I'll be doing for those episodes. Is I won't drink those until the pod, because it's, it's different. Like, when you're getting the same beers at Trader Joe's or like Bevmo or, Total Wine, it's just like, you kind of run into the same stuff. So to grab local Arizona stuff was really great.
Right. So which one, give us a sneak preview. Which one did you try for the latest pod?
It was a German style wheat ale.
Okay.
And that was from Keith, what's the Fin du Monde? What's the brand again?
Unibrew.
Unibrew, by Unibrew. Mm-hmm. Very low ABV, but very, very tasty. So I would definitely have that again for sure.
Jim Lujan is chiming in. Did Gary tell you guys he stared at you while you were sleeping? Just wanted you to know.
He didn't.
I mean, that
tell me.
explains
I
saw him. Yeah.
I saw him, and I finished.
All right.
Because I'm
good night, everybody. I think that wraps it up today. Yes.
Because I'm a good guest.
You're a good guest. That's right. I'm a good host. I'm trying to just make you feel comfortable.
Yes, you were. I maintained eye contact.
I know you need that little bit to get over the finish line, and I'm not here to judge you. Okay. So refine the pitch. I found. So this is something people who've watched my streams for a while, they know I've talked about this. Finding the pitch for DvsM is always just a work in progress for me. I've never decided like, that's it. That's what I'm always going to do. Perfect. Now I've arrived. I'm always examining like, what is the best way to try and get across what I'm doing with this book, especially since I think my book is, and I don't mean this in a negative way. I mean, just in a very plain way, a little weird. Like it's kind of hard to compare it to anything else. And so it's like, well, how do I help someone who's being introduced to it think about it well enough where they can decide whether they want to buy it or not? Now that I have 3, I find it's way easier to articulate the POV character concept to people, where it's very easy when I have 3 books out to say, and Keith probably heard me say this a million times, this one's about a man in black, this one's about a scientist in a top secret facility, and this one's just about a woman who's out taking nature photos and she sees alien stuff she wasn't supposed to see. Like, it very quick, anyone hears that, and however long that took me, 10 seconds, I don't know, like, they get now, like, okay, I see, like, this is different characters, different stories, standalone, I understand. Certainly when there was 1 book, when I was just doing 75, and even when I had 2, it was a little tricky to say, like, each one of these will be standalone. You'll see as the series goes on. Like, that's a weirder, more abstract thing to try and pitch to a customer. It's very, I found very easy when I have 3 good examples to break them down that way. And that's why I think in a lot of the promotion and pitching going forward, you will hear me breaking down each issue in that way. Like, very, like, focusing on what is this one about? What is this one about? What is this one about? I felt like I had an easier time pitching, and it was easier for people when they heard that to train on whatever they thought was most interesting to them. So some people were like very much like gravitated to the man in black thing. Some people loved the idea of just an eyewitness. Some people loved the idea of a top secret lab, like whatever, you know, like you would find some people would buy all 3, but usually it would be a thing where they would, one of those things was their jam, and that allowed them to chase it. But.
Yeah. And I think something you discovered during the show was that 79 is not the first one you want to grab. Like, I think we openly talked about, like, we're just going back and forth and spitballing and, you know, just talking, like, me as a reader of your book, I was like, you know, 79 is the one where I would say you can't start here, because the other 2 kind of give you a grasp of the world at a larger scale. Not larger scale, but you understand the world a little bit better in those first 2, where 79 really takes place inside of a building and you don't get much outside of that building.
Like, what's going on? Well, and on the flip side of that, this experience made me realize, talking to you guys and also having a step back and thinking about it, you could start with 97. Like, totally. 97 could be an introduction to it. I remember at the time, I thought it would be too extreme of a start, that there's too, like, you know, you've got Mars bots, you got dinosaurs, you got like old men in black, like it's just a lot. And I thought 75 is an easier way to ease in. But now with some distance looking at it, it's like, no, if you wanted, you could start with 97. And I think the fact that Jenny isn't bystander and doesn't have any idea what's going on is a perfect vehicle for the reader.
Yeah,
I think that allows them, it's like, okay, well, I'm lost too, so that works. So yeah, that was about it.
Yeah, we talked about it. Like, for me, it was, I just feel like when people are asking, they sort of want a guiding hand. So where should I start? Start with the first one. That's the first one.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
Or you know, the softer version of that would be like, well, you could start with either of these 2, but this is the first one I did. You know, in order of creation probably makes the most sense. I mean, what's cool about the story is you can actually start with the second one without any explanation of the, you know, like, look, you can start with the second trade of Second Shift for Scott. You can start with the second trade of Kadoja, but odds are you're going to need to, you know, like, you can start with the second trade because I recap the first trade on the first page. And that's something that your books offer that I don't think ours do. You know, you could just start anywhere and it's all going to get to the same place. But I mean, I think go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, with a third book, to your point, you now, I mean, I don't know how Microsoft Excel works or anything, but I think 3 might be enough to get you your first trend line, you know? And I think when you were talking about this, Gary, that, you know, when you talk about all 3, now a bigger picture comes into place. Like, on just one, it's like, so what is this, like a Men in Black book? With just two, it might be like, okay, I'm starting to see something. But with three, I think that that really does crystallize the larger story that this story is all about.
Well, and it makes me feel with a lot more confidence that the more I do, the easier and easier it will get to pitch. Because the next one, so, you know, this time 2 years from now, I'll be saying Men in Black, scientist, innocent bystander, and a soldier. You know, like, and I think it gets easier and easier. Like, okay, so I'm going to see all different parts, you know, and I think that also gives, I expect that the soldier one especially, I think is going to open new audiences. Where right now I'm getting the UFO conspiracy crowd, I think. But once I have a soldier thing, like there's a lot of people who are way into that military shit, you know, and that's what they, you know, and I think that will be a way to like, oh, cool. And maybe it'll be the gateway to, well, if you like this, there's a little bit of soldier stuff in 97. And if you liked 97, well, maybe you want to check out the Man in Black stuff. You know, I think that can get you a little lost in the maze of DvsM, maybe. But the other thing, it never occurred to me before this show was the appeal of pitching, and this goes back to Chili Sizes, a very regional comic, that all of DvsM is set somewhere in Arizona. And if you are familiar with Arizona, there's a lot of recognizable stuff in it. And when I would be pitching to natives, literally and figuratively, there were a lot of Native Americans that wandered by, and I'd be pitching. And as soon as they heard like that 97 is set up on the res or near Canyon de Chelly, like you would see them light up a little bit. And there were people who knew like rural Arizona. If you said, oh, it's like 75 is set in Wilcox, like there'd be like this little click of like, oh, that's crazy. Like who would set a comic in Wilcox of all places? Like, and I think the analogy I used with you guys is like, I'm just a fish in the ocean, like unaware of the water, because it's all I've ever, like, I don't really think of the fact too much that, well, it's an Arizona comic.
Yeah, I pitch that when I'm in San Diego. Like,
oh, do you? Yeah.
Yeah, I have San Diego landmarks as well in second shift. And so I make sure to point that out. It's like, hey, here's Balboa Park. If you're familiar, you know, it's like, oh, if you live in South Bay, this is National City. And they go, yes, that's the IHOP. That's a National City because it's been around forever. And there's like a Jollibee, which is like a Filipino like fast food joint. So like I'll point stuff like that out and they'll be like, oh, yeah. So they'll kind of get geeked up over it. You know, the San Diego Comic Convention or the Convention Center, like that's in there as well. So those landmarks really do help sell it a little bit more to locals. And you got to experience that. There was a guy that was just all about it, and he wanted to do like an all Arizonian creator something or other, like a channel.
Yeah, he had a whole. It's one of those people you meet at a con. If anyone has worked cons, I'm sure we have all had probably many experiences like this. If you've never worked a con, get ready to meet this guy. And again, if you're watching out there, this is I'm not slamming you at all. But there's always someone that you meet. I think you met one of these people who's like, I have a vision of a thing, whatever the thing is. And you could be a part of this vision, you know? And it's hard to sort out, like, is this person full of shit? Is this person real? Is this a thing? Is it not a thing?
Right.
Do they have juice? Do they not? Like, will anything ever come of this? And you're intrigued and you listen and you exchange information and then you wait to see if you're ever going to hear from this person again. Like there's always one of those. But.
Good news is Keith got to meet his again, and like he had visual representation of what he wanted, which was Kadoja as My Little Pony.
That's right.
That's what you got to bring to the table. You got to bring the idea, and you have to have the visuals to really sell this thing. And I think Keith's in it. I think he's down.
Absolutely. Dee, I was raised in the military and married the military. I am all into that military shit. See, no, I mean, some people, my brother, maybe he'll actually read a DvsM. The military one. Like, I mean, I totally get it. And like I said, I cut my teeth on like G.I. Joe comics. My dad's a veteran. Like, I that's how I know, like, some people, that will be the thing where they'll be like, I absolutely want to read a comic about a bunch of soldiers, you know? And then again, hopefully they'll enjoy it enough where they're like, okay, well now I have questions. I want to read some of this other stuff. So, The other thing I did in this one, people who have watched, they know I've struggled with. I've gone through this whole journey of it's dinosaurs versus Marsbots, it's DvsM, or dinosaurs versus Marsbots, it's DvsM. It's, you know, and now like this was the thing where I was adding a pinch of dinosaurs versus Marsbots in my pitches, just a little bit. You know, when I felt like I was talking to someone where I thought that would maybe be a thing to spark their interest. I wasn't shy about the dinosaur versus Marsbots language. Where I think at Arizona Comic Book Arts Festival, I don't know if I said it once. I think the whole time it was DvsM, DvsM, DvsM. I did fine. I did actually great. It's still like that one day at Arizona Comic Book Arts Fest is still my all-time greatest con day. But I feel like the audience at PFF is a little different. And I felt like I could get away with being a little more whatever you would call saying dinosaurs versus Marsbots is. But Keith, were you gonna? Did I see?
Yeah. I mean, it's. I think so. I was in a similar place with Kadoja for a while for this, which was there's a period where I'm like, okay, look, Kadoja is a giant monster story, but it's more than that. You know, like it's sci-fi. It's about, you know, what happens when you build the ultimate weapon and it turns on you. You know, like in early reviews, I remember people saying like, you know, it invokes Dr. Strangelove as much as it invokes, you know, which is Godzilla, of course, in a angular way.
Right.
But so I had a brief experimental period where I tried to pitch Kadoja as a sci-fi book. And instead of people walking up to the table and me going like, do you like giant monsters? It'd be like, do you like, you know, what, like, where are you on sci-fi? You know, that kind of thing. Right. It confused people. It confused people because I was like, oh, so do you like sci-fi? And then they'd be like, yeah, but they'd be looking at the books. And then I think I might ask another question. They'd be looking, I'm like, oh, fuck, do you like giant monsters? You know, like that kind of thing, right? I had to sort of punt on the idea and just give myself an F for the term paper in that case. And you got to lean into it, you know? So I think it'll be fun to watch you kind of navigate this DvsM versus dinosaurs versus Marsbots in terms of how you pitch. And it, after a while, you realize you can sort of do both. You know, in my case, I think I was trying for that broader thing. And the broader thing in my case is now indie comics. Because now, you know, at least if someone comes up and I say, do you like giant monsters? They're like, not really. I'm like, oh, so indie comics, right? Like that kind of stuff. And sometimes I'll get a no there. And then I'm like, fuck. Then what?
Right.
You know,
which is something I'll be talking about in my bad list.
You can always go back on the Scott Lost cool art. You know, that's a good fallback too. Oh, you just like looking at cool stuff.
Dee on the topic of the military thing doesn't mean you agree with the politics of things. That is two different things. 100% agree. I was thinking about my dad just the other day. So my dad, his entire adult life, his boss was the government. He joined the army and went to Vietnam. He came back and was a cop. And then he was working as an investigator for a county attorney's office. So he's always been the man. And yet, you've never met someone who would give more side eye to the government, you know, which I always thought was kind of fascinating. Like he's devoted his entire life to the government and also like looks at it like it's a rattlesnake in your bed. You know, so it's and I feel like there's a truism in that. When you talk to vets, like at least in my experience, I'm sure there is exceptions, but when you talk to vets, there is a kind of cynicism or at least a skepticism about government. And they would know maybe better than anybody in some ways. You know, they would know, like, I think the importance of patriotism and things like that, but also how they've seen horrible decisions made and people's lives lost by the people they were answering to. So you get a really, to me, a very interesting mix of, you know, rah, happy 4th of July, and, you know, these fucking guys, you know, like whatever. It's kind, and that's what I think. And I just, without suffice it to say, there will be a good heaping tablespoon of that in the next DvsM. Like, you're going to have soldiers talking, and you're going to get that vibe. You're going to get that vibe of like, this is important what we do. I'm proud of what we do. You know, we are heroes. We're doing heroic things. You know, these people don't even understand the sacrifices we're making. And we also work for pieces of shit. You know, this weird mix of like, I don't know how these coexist, but they do. That's my impression. But you'll, again, tune in a couple of years to see bits of that in DvsM number 4.
It was good seeing you refine your pitch as the show is going on, by the way, to get back to that real quick. You trying different iterations of your pitch. Like, I know you had about 3. Keith went away.
Oh, he's going audio. He's audio only. So he probably,
yeah, I'm just stepping away for a minute.
He's stripping. He's stripping his clothes.
Oh, okay. Right on.
Yeah. Wait until the
Now we're
reveal.
talking.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to those tassels I bought you. I
Yeah,
think that'll be the exciting.
He's doing a tuck and getting a robe.
Oh
and,
no!
putting
It'll
a
be
long
full
wig on.
Silence of the Lambs. with
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Goodbye, horses.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was cool, like, listening to you refine your pitch over and over and kind of changing it up. And
I'm trying to. I was experimenting a lot, just to
Yeah.
see, like, well, what if I say like this? Does that seem to work? Or
Right. Yeah, there was one you did. I can't really remember, but it was very vague. And I was like, Gary, you talk about it. Talk a little more about it. You know, it's
I'm
just like
exploring the field with the pitches, and this is another thing. And this is, I didn't list this anywhere in my good or bad, but we talked about this. Once I was in Profitville, I gave myself permission to let off the gas and be experimental and try different things and not really care, you know, and also be a little lazy. Like, there was an element of like, well, I sold more books than I thought I was going to sell. Like, I'll ease off the gas. I'll do a weird pitch. I'll do a very minimal pitch and see what happens. I'll do a crazy pitch and see what happens, you know, just because it's like, who cares? Like, I'm already making money at this point. Which, I don't know, maybe that's good. Maybe that's a good mentality, or maybe it was bad. But
I mean, there's different approaches to everything. And I think if you are, in fact, if you're already in the black and you're just like, it's all gravy after this, and you can kind of loosen up, then that's kind of the sweet spot. You know, that's the sweet spot of it all. And especially you being at a local show. So like for me and Keith, maybe, you know, even though we are in the black and, you know, we haven't talked about that. Maybe we can talk about that before we get into the bad. Like, I had a great show. It was one of my best shows that wasn't San Diego Comic-Con, and which is rare for Phoenix Fan Fusion for me. I just have this really weird pattern where the first 2 days I shit the bed. Like, there's just, you know, it's very minimal sales. I'm just kind of passing time by and like questioning my life. And then the third day hits and you're like, this is the best thing ever. Nothing's better than this when you're just selling money or selling books hand over fist, making tons of money. And this year was different in the fact that I was selling straight away. And so the first day was gangbusters. Like, I think all 3 of us got in the black by day 1, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And and so I was like, this is great. But, you know, something I talked to you about personally was, you were mentioning like kind of your view on it. You're like, yeah, you know, I just try to do this and kind of stay back a little bit. And like, you know, you're like in the black, so it's all good. Yeah. And where my headspace is very similar to how you approach your book. Like, there's writer Gary, there's artist Gary. For me, there's artist Scott, there's convention Scott. Convention Scott, you know, if he's not drawing, he's there to sell books. So it's up to me as convention Scott to try my best to do my job at the very best, you know, possible.
Well, and in us talking about it, I think is maybe when we were driving in that last day, recognizing that the fact that it's a local show for me, and it was far less pressure. I knew if I was doing a show in Burbank or in San Diego or even in Tucson or something, you know, now there's a level of, even if you're in the black, there's a level of skin in the game. It's like, I went through this whole headache. I loaded up the car. I drove here. I'm crashing on somebody's floor. Like, I want to sell every single book I can. Like, it's a totally different mentality. Where if I'm home, like I have this weird home court advantage where it's like, it's going great, it's going fine. Like I'm gonna enjoy myself. And I don't feel that pressure of like, no, I'm on the road. Like this is a headache. This is disruptive. It's gotta count. Like I wanna squeeze every dollar out of this I can. It was a different mentality.
No, I think in a way that's pretty adjacent to my recap of both weekends, right? Because I did too. I was there at Fan Fusion Friday and Saturday, took a flight home, and then did Monsterpalooza Sunday. Thank you to both of you fine gentlemen for manning the table and allowing for some sales while I wasn't there. So I do appreciate that. And then on Friday and Saturday at Monsterpalooza, I had my wife and kid in various combinations working my table. But I felt pressure, Gary, and it was, like I don't know, man. I by naming it, I hope to extinguish it. But we're getting to the point where Keith has his Saturday 12:15 in the afternoon near meltdown every convention. Right. Because Scott, right. I had it in Amazing Vegas and I had it here. And like, there's something about the first 3 hours of Saturday where like, I could just leave, like I could literally show up 3 hours after the doors open and then it goes crazy, right? Like that's what it was about Amazing Vegas.
Yeah.
And here too, it's like, I had this strangely quiet Saturday morning and then started to sort of be a runaway downhill train of this thought, which is my sense of the force tells me that, like much like Scott, I have been, I don't want to say working on it, but I've had a natural evolution from a person who sat back and was a little more chill about sales coming to him versus a person that's kind of casting lines out there. And it's now gotten to the point where I'm good enough at casting lines to where there is a pretty big difference if I'm not at a booth. So, part of this runaway, neurosis was things aren't going well. And I only have 4 hours before I have to leave for my flight to make as many sales as possible because, like, I don't blame anyone, like you guys did an awesome job and I love it. But, if I'm there, then I'm going to sell more,
right.
And
no one, it makes me think of something I remember my parents saying when they were trying to find babysitters when we were kids. No one's going to love your kids as much as you do. Like there's an element of that where it's like, I would feel the same way. It's like, no one's going to sell my book like I can, and,
right.
And also I think when you're at a con, you're a customer at a con. You want to meet the creator. We've all had that experience of going by and you see something you like and you're like, oh, did you do this? And it's someone's wife or something. And they're like, no, it's my husband. He's, wherever. Like, I don't know about you guys. When I hear that, it's sort of like, oh, like I wanted to get this from the guy who made it, like it's just not the same. That's part of why you're doing it at a con is I want to meet the person. I want to, have that experience. But also Sunday was just kind of garbage. Like Scott, it was our worst day, right? It was, I know it was my worst day.
I mean, by the end of it and like those Miles Morales, like the metal print stuff, like that saved my ass. And if I didn't have those, it wouldn't have been a good day at all. So I got pretty close to the total of the first day, but it was easily the worst. It was very slow. Like people weren't, it's just like the amount that I was pitching was far less and the success rate was far less. And it was just kind of like, this is really weird. This is the last day. Usually if you get a pitch to someone, like if you get a full-on pitch to them, it's the last day. They're more than willing to part with money that day as opposed to the first two. But it was like bizarro world from my experience with Phoenix Fan Fusions. Like Sundays is usually gangbusters and it was not. And like we even tried to leave early and it didn't work out. Just, parking and cop direction and stuff like that.
Such a nightmare. Oh my God. It's like a bad dream trying to get out of it. I didn't list it in my bad, probably because I'm blocking it out. But it was so hard to leave. And we tried early. We tried like an hour early because it was dying. And it was like, let's just go.
And I think we both agreed around like 12 to 1. We're like, hey, if it's shit around 3, you want to just start slowly packing things up and we'll get out of here by 4. And we're both like, yeah, let's do that.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And it would have been perfect. Because like the last couple hours of the show, literally, we didn't even need to be there. No. Like I think you got maybe 1 to 2 sales. I maybe got 1. Yeah. But if you said, hey, you'll make a $25 sale, or you can save 3 hours, go get food, hang out with Gary for a little bit, maybe have a victory beer at his place, and then
Rest before you had to drive home.
and then hit the road. Yeah,
Yeah.
like shortly after that. It's like, yeah, let's do that.
Let's do
I'd
that.
rather do that. But
like you said, in my experience too, last day of cons have always been great. This is the first time the last day of a con was pretty lame. But it also was. What's that?
You want me to tell you my theory?
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's a function of the fact that they moved the convention from Memorial Day weekend to a normal weekend. That's my belief. Because on Memorial Day weekend, Sunday is your Saturday, right? So
Right.
my opinion is that attendance, like, that's why I love having it be over Memorial Day, which they already announced for next year it is. So I was so happy to see that, because you basically get 2 Saturdays historically.
Yeah.
By doing it on Memorial Day. The second Sunday, like, everybody loves just kicking it on a Sunday on Memorial Day, because the best part is you don't have to go back to work tomorrow.
Yes. Maybe that could have been it. It did seem like a sleepier day. And I don't think it was projecting. I don't think Scott's or my energy were less. Like, if anything, I usually go into the last day with like a second win, because I feel like, all right, let's finish strong. You know, that kind of. So you
get the lay of the land, and you build a tolerance towards it. Like, conventions are so draining, like the ability that you have to stay on the whole time. And by the third day, you're kind of like, all right, you know, like, I've already done this 2 days. And by the third day, like you said, you have a second wind with it, because you know what's expected of the day, expected of you throughout the convention.
It was for both of us. I mean, Saturday was too, but Sunday especially. It was the gravy day. It was the all profit day. Any sale you made is like just a cha-ching, because like you've made all your nut. Like, all of it's printing is covered, tables covered, everything's good. Now this is all just in my pocket. So you're there's like a level of enthusiasm where it's like this, like Friday morning, we're all on some level white knuckling it. You know, you're constantly, it's like, when's the first sale? You know, like I want to get that first sale. I don't want to be waiting till 1 o'clock for my first sale. Like, hopefully right away I'll be able to get a sale. And then it's all, okay, what is the amount? What's the dollar figure, like, that I'm trying to get to? And that was, I think, most of Friday. We were trying, like, okay, let's get to the point where we're like, oh, we can exhale and actually sort of enjoy yourself. You're not sitting there panicking over, what if I build it and no one shows up? You know, that kind of, like, now you're okay. Saturday was a little bit like, okay, we can chill. And Sunday, especially, I showed up, I think, I was tired because cons are exhausting, but I felt like I had a pretty good attitude Sunday morning. Like, okay, this will be good. And yeah, it was sleepy, not as much traffic, lots of these kind of like aimless browsers walking by, and you'd ask them like, hey, in the comments or whatever, and they would barely acknowledge you and just shuffle on. You know, it was just lame.
Yeah, for me, it was strange, because Monsterpalooza hasn't announced their 2024 date, and probably won't for a while. But I'm thinking that they'll just stick to the typical first weekend in June thing. And if they do, then I get to do both shows in full. And I love both shows. So having to choose between 2 shows you love is, you know, a certain kind of excruciating, right? But all things said and done, I made the right decision. You know, like it was crazy, because I left the table on Saturday. I mean, what, Scott, 45 minutes later, the energy dropped off a ledge, right? Like, I think you said that, like, the last hour and a half of the show on Saturday was dead. And then you got to Sunday, and Sunday was dead. And then so for me, I had to make a hard choice. Like, when do I leave Phoenix Fan Fusion? When do I do Monsterpalooza? And Sunday at Monsterpalooza was pretty jumping. And so at least for me, making the best of a bad situation, I believe I made the right choices in terms of timing and everything. It's just weird the way it worked out. It's weird when you're right about something, you know, like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Does anyone, and then my final easy one. And I don't follow this stuff very much. I try not to get lost in this, but all my follower counts on all my social media is bumped up after the show. So like that's another good. Would
Yeah.
anyone like to chime in with goods that weren't covered or that they'd like to elaborate on before we move on to the bad?
So, okay, so I got one for the increased followers. So for Christmas, Keith hooked me up with this dot card, and so it's a digital business card, and having that is great because I'm instantly getting followers on Instagram. It's not like, here's my business card, and maybe if you remember who you got this business card from at the end of the show, you'll actually look me up and add me. It's just the dot card reader, it pulls all of my socials up onto their phone straight away. And one of the things I was saying at the show is, hey, I pinned my booth. If you follow me on Instagram specifically, I pinned our booth number to the top of my Instagram. So if you think about any of our books later, if you think of my books later or the prints or whatever you saw,
Mhm.
you go to my Instagram and you'll see our booth number right there, and they're like, "Oh, that's great," and then they follow me straight away. So that was a nice little side benefit of number one, not having to print business cards anymore, and essentially kind of going, "Hey, here's 5 cents. Maybe follow me." You know,
Yeah.
like that's the equivalent of printing business cards. You're giving money away, but having this dot card, it's like, oh, I never have to spend another dime on business cards and worry and then like go through the show before you leave and look down and you're like, hey, that's my fucking business card on the ground, like, you know,
Right.
and kind of like have feelings about it. It's like, did they
Right.
throw it on the ground? Did it fall out of their bag? What happened? And so now I don't have to worry about that.
So I that reminds me, I had a question for both you guys about this. So yeah, both of you were doing the move of, I don't have cards. I've got this basically a QR code. You can scan it right now and follow me. I was still doing cards, and this time, and just through like forgetting, at Arizona Comic Book Arts Fest, I did have QR codes everywhere, so people could go and do that. I did not this time, just forgetting to do it. My question to the two of you is, is it a conscious choice, or is it just the way you decided to do, just the way you're doing it? Why not have the QR code at all times? I noticed customers would have to ask, do you have a card? And then you would produce the thing for them to scan. Why not have it out like on your price sheet or something where they can do it on their own? Is that deliberate or just the way you were doing it?
It is deliberate for me, and I have a reason, but
okay. Let's hear it.
So it's because my goal is to make a sale first. So for me, it's, you know, like, okay, so what do we know about business people who want business cards? You know, Scott and I, based on 10 plus years of doing this, you based on close to 10, if not 10 years of doing this. Around the time if people are saying, do you have a business card? They are saying, I'm not buying anything today.
They want an off-ramp. They want to be able to walk away and save face and accommodate you, appease you a little bit. Yeah,
exactly. And that's okay, right? Like it's okay to not buy something today. Right. But that said, I would like the in-person con experience to at least be as funneled to buying something today as possible. If they want the off-ramp, I'll give it to you. You just got to ask me for it. Where I feel my concern would be that if I put a QR code there to follow me, it's the equivalent of just putting that business card. You know, we all did it, right? We all had that phase where we put business cards on the edge of the table and people are like, are these free? Yes. Thank you. And then they
take them and leave. Right.
Like
so
they're getting a tiny
your
little piece.
concern is people would walk by, they would look for a little bit, they would just take a picture of the QR code and walk off.
Yeah.
And by adding that little bit of,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
See ya. Yeah. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
And again, that's okay, but I'd like you to go through me for it. And I'd at least like to throw, you know, even if you walk by and you say, do you have a business card? You know, like I can say, yeah, just zap this, but now I have you for 4 seconds and I can at least tell you about this book, you know, like that kind of thing. Right. So
like Scott, was it the same with you, or?
I mean, yeah, totally. I totally thought of that first. Not Keith. I'm not just piggybacking off what he just said. Yeah, it kind of.
In fact, I've thought that for a long time, for years now.
I mean, I remember my first beer. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's just instinctual thing too. After doing shows for so long, is I no longer, when I did have business cards, I wouldn't leave them out for people just to take. Number one, you guys saw my setup. My setup's insane. So it's just like, space is a premium.
Yes.
And 2, I don't want people just walking by snagging my card, like not wanting to do, not wanting to actually use it.
Yeah.
And so I would hide it behind the table, and like in the same way Keith's kind of forcing their hand to communicate with him, like it makes sense to me, and
Okay, so to that, and I'm not, there's no intent with these questions. I'm just sort of exploring it.
Yeah, all good.
Why not have a pile of cards rather than a QR thing by the table? So if people say, make people ask, do you have a card, and say yes, and you produce it where it wasn't visible before. What do you think there's an advantage to having the QR code? Is it just because it's now you're not paying 5 cents a card?
For mine, it's habit.
I pay. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah. So like the business card thing, it was, hey, every time someone takes a card from you, instead of them giving you money, you're giving them money. You're giving them 5 cents. So it's just like 5, 10 cents, whatever you're paying for your business card. And so for you, it's a waste of money. And it's just like, I don't like that. We're not going to do that. And I'll save my business card for purchases or people who ask. And it's like, okay, when you buy something from me, I'll stick it in the book, I'll stick it in the bag, the plastic or whatever, so you have it. So hey, you liked me enough to buy my book off of me, maybe you'll like my book enough to follow me. And so that's my thought process on that. As far as the QR code goes, I did think about putting it on something, but like with what Keith said, it makes me go, oh yeah, I don't want to do that then, because that was actually a passing thought. I think it was when you actually showed your setup. You're like, hey, this was my setup at that smaller convention. I had all this visual stuff to show. And I think I saw your QR code, and I was just like, oh, that's a really good idea. And, but just based off of Keith's logic, that 100% makes sense to me. It's like, I'd rather you talk to me first, and then maybe I can pitch you on the book, and maybe it sounds interesting enough for you to buy. And if it doesn't, then no big deal. But hopefully the interaction leads to a sale, or then it just leads down that road. You have a card, and then you deal with it. And also, I don't want to put the card out and then just accidentally take my card because they think it's just a regular business card. So it's like I always have it behind the table. But
people often reach for the dot card. I like bring out the dot card, and they're like, and I'm like, hey, you're not taking that.
Yeah, this is mine.
Get your goddamn hands off my card.
I just told you I had a digital card. Why are you going to take my card? It's a digital card.
Is there a way? This is my dream. Is there a way, an easy way? I know there's a complicated multi-step way to do it, which therefore it's, to me, not legitimate. Is there an easy way to be, here's a QR code. Doing this, clicking on this will make you automatically follow my Instagram and give you $5 off a purchase. Is there a way to lubricate it that way, where it's like, if you're a follower, this gives you a break, like to incentivize the whole thing. I get a follower and I get a sale.
I'm sure there's a way to do that. Like, I know when you generate QR codes, you have to link them to something.
Yeah.
I've never done one myself, but you link it to something. So let's say you created a coupon on your website.
Yeah.
Like you can't get to it via your website. Like, it's not a click option, it's not a tab or anything like that, but it's just part of your website. If you click this, then it takes you to this coupon, and that's the only way you get the coupon is by scanning my QR code at a show. So
even better, especially for the Kickstarter crew. Click on this QR code, like follow this link. It'll subscribe you to my newsletter, and by doing that, it will automatically send you a coupon. Like, the first thing it will get, by signing up to my newsletter, you get a coupon, and you can use it right now, on your, and then you get a mailing list for your Kickstarter. You get a sale, and you get a follower all in one fell swoop. There's got to be a way to do this, right?
Totally.
Like, that to me is sort of the dream. Like, if you can do it where you get all, because I've been thinking about, well, someday I'll do a Kickstarter. Conventional wisdom seems to be like, you want a mailing list, which I do not have. So
we talked to a creator. He's a pretty well-known comic book artist, Andy Belanger, or for us Americans, Bellinger. And he had said it's so important to do the pre-launch on your Kickstarter and try to get as many people to click the pre-launch and to subscribe to the pre-launch.
For like the notification.
For the notification, yes, because then lets them know as soon as that thing gets launched, hey, this thing that you were keeping a watch on, it's up. And then
Right.
that kind of lets you get the backers straight away. And for him, it makes a lot of sense because he's comic famous. So like he
Mhm.
can get 400 people to subscribe or to get notified when his Kickstarters go. But like people like me, it's like I can get like 25, 35 or something like that. And, you know, but it's not, but what that does is it gives you more backers on day one, which
Right.
the Kickstarter algorithm loves. And the
Right.
more backers you get on the first 24 hours, the more likely you'll get a project we love. They'll push your project to the front page, that type of thing. So
Right.
yeah, so the mailing list is important in that sense where you can kind of get people right away. But I also have a mailing list that I've done with many a Kickstarters. Like I've generated it over the last, you know, whatever, 10 years. And I don't think that it does as much as one thinks it would. Like I do
Okay.
get backers from the mailing list, and it's just because one thing I have on my Kickstarters is in the survey is, how did you hear about the Kickstarter? That's number one. That's my number one question every time because I'm very curious. Is it coming from our podcast? Is it coming from social media? Which social media? Is it coming from the mailing list? And so, and then there's always the random guy that goes, I was just scrolling through Kickstarter and I saw it and looked cool. And it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Like, I think those ones are my favorite ones because like, you don't know anything about me, but you looked at the project and you said, this is cool enough for me to give you money. And like,
Yeah.
so those are awesome. But
No, that's always super flattering.
part of the,
Yeah, I mean, go
the
ahead.
good, sorry, this is my last part and I'll hand it over to you, Keith. Part of the good was I added a few more people to my mailing list. So if you are doing conventions, that's something you actively want to be doing. The first 2 days were such whirlwinds that it was so busy that I didn't have my shit together.
Right.
And like, as opposed to day 3 where it was slower, I was like, oh yeah, I haven't attempted to get people for my mailing list. So I added 3 more people. And then, you know, they like you because they were good enough to buy books off of you at the show. Again, hopefully they like your books. And then, so when you send them email saying, hey, just so you know, I got a Kickstarter up for the latest issue, they go, oh, hey, I really enjoyed that. And they pick that up. So that's something that needed a little more focus at this show. But it's different from when Keith and I, let's say, did WonderCon, where we had so much downtime that we were hitting them with everything. Every sale we did, we're like, okay, well, here's the free thing that I've been meaning to give away because I'm trying to declutter my house. Here's a free print.
Yeah.
Oh, did you sign up for our mailing list? Oh, here's this. Oh, I forgot to give you this pack because if you buy the whole bundle pack, you get this for free. And so for the first 2 days, I didn't do any of those things. Day 3 was so slow, I was able to do it all. WonderCon, when Keith and I did it, we did it every sale because we didn't have shit going on.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you hit it all. The podcast, you know, we do a podcast, you know, all this stuff. Right? So, yeah, I mean, for me, no, I think you covered all of my good. I mean, for me, the good was just, you know, be your second thing, man. It's always great hanging out with you guys. And like Scott said, Gary, we're so thankful for you hosting us because, you know, it's one thing to stay at a nice place and you have a nice place. It's another to stay at a nice place with good company so that your evenings are actually like taken up. And, you know, none of you guys mentioned it, but boy, did I like the Angel's Trumpet as a place to eat.
I was going to circle back to that. I should have mentioned that with Saw Other Friends because Scott Circlin drove down from Surprise. So we got to hang out with him. And then Scott's friend, Cowboy Jack, who is also a cool guy. And yeah, we had some beers and some food at Angel's Trumpet downtown. Even though it was First Friday and it was a cluster.
Oh my God.
It was a nightmare to get in and out of there. The food was good and the beer was good. So
yeah, no, nice. I'm happy because I already told my wife about that because we are going back to Phoenix at the beginning of the month, end of this month, for big athletic competition, and we're going to be there for a while. And like Angel's Trumpet is very close to the downtown convention center. It's a short little drive, so that's going to be a great place. We're definitely going back there. But yeah, man, it was good. I thought the energy at Phoenix Fan Fusion Friday and Saturday was excellent. I thought it was the best in convention energy since I think the first year I did Fan Fusion, which was maybe, it's hard to say, like 2017, something like that. So yeah, man, it's nice to see a lot of the energy coming back, even if it's in the form of different fans post-COVID. So yeah, man, it was all good. A lot of good stuff.
All right. Well, so then we can now move on to my list of the bad, which, for full disclosure, these guys are not co-signing. They don't know what I'm about to list. I certainly might have differences or maybe a lot of overlap. We'll see. But so here's my bad.
Great graphic.
Yeah, there we go. I tried to pick appropriate graphics. I thought overall, like the nickel and diming and just the price of the tables and the price of food and all that, and the price of price for people to attend, just too expensive.
The convention, so you guys don't know this, the convention sent a email out saying there is no outside food allowed via guest or exhibitor.
Or drink.
Yeah,
or
no
drink.
food or drink. No food or drink. And like, we understand that for fans. We understand that.
Right.
It does not make sense for vendors. It's like, we are paying you an exorbitant amount of money already to table here. And then now we have to buy your shitty food too. And it's just, they allowed you to bring a container that you can put water in their water fountains, but you weren't allowed to bring bottles of water.
You can't bring water. You had to. You had tea
for theirs. Yeah, you can spend $7 for water there.
So Scott, Keith and I are true coffee addicts. Scott is a tea drinker, and so in the morning he would fill his thermos with hot water and have like tea bags. And they had one day they had him pour out his. I'm sorry to use this technical term. Fucking ridiculous. Like, it's just insane. Why? This is an example of just the nickel and diming of people who are already paying a huge amount for a table. Like the amount we paid for an artist alley table, divided 3 ways even, was kind of like not cheap. It's not cheap. It's not like a throwaway nothing. Like, it's a significant chunk. And just a lot of that.
The price went up so substantially that Scott and I actually paid more this year for a third of the table than we paid for half of that same table at the prior show, right? Like, that's how much the cost. Well, and it makes sense in a weird way, because this is the first show where they were able to change the price post-COVID. You know, the last time we did a show was all the tables that people bought, months before COVID broke. So they were honoring, the old price, not the new price.
Yes, they were grandfathered in, sort of. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So go ahead. Yeah. So, but it was a doubling basically of table cost. It was shocking when that announcement went out.
Yeah. But we are geniuses, and we figured it out, and we got our beverages and our food in on setup day, which was Thursday.
We did. Maybe Ixnay on the upsay day.
Well, I have no idea what you are talking about.
Yeah, I don't know what you're alluding to. I myself would never think to smuggle in food and drink to the respectable Phoenix Fan Fusion, where I believe in every decision they've ever made, and I'm a big fan of.
Well, I did.
I got to pay $7 for a bottled water and got to pay $25 for a meal.
And it was an open conversation. I told you guys there was one point where, so every morning I had a big bottle of water, which somehow got in under the table somewhere during the move-in. I don't know who brought it in, but I had a bottle of water for each day. It was my Friday bottle, Saturday bottle, Sunday bottle. And my routine is I would get there, I would drink it, and by about 11 or 12, it'd be empty, and I would go and I would be refilling it all day at the drinking fountain. So I was at least getting some clean water and some municipal bleach water, from the drinking fountains. At one point, I was refilling my bottle of water. Some guy dressed as some anime character, I don't know, was leaning up against the wall near the drinking fountain. And he said, they charge $0.25 a second to use this drinking fountain. Like, this was the running gag where, like, if they're finding any way to charge you for anything, Phoenix Fan Fusion is doing. And the only way they weren't completely screwing people this year, there was a year I had gone, I think it was 19. I think it was 2019. I think it was the last one before COVID.
The year we met you. Or
Probably.
Yep.
Well, then you will remember if this was the year when, maybe it was the year before this, but it was a year where they did not provide the black curtain drapes behind you for free. That was an upgrade.
That wasn't my year. We did have the black curtain.
Okay, so maybe it was 18.
2018, yeah.
It was probably the year I was releasing 75. I had my very first comic. And, you know, I mean, anyone who's been to a con, you know what I'm talking about. But in case you don't, you have like these conference tables, and behind you there's like metal pipes, and there's these black fabric curtains hanging. So you're not seeing the back of the people behind you. You know, like it's not just open tables. There's like these dividers. Generally, these have always been just part of the setup. You get a garbage can, you get some chairs, you get a table, and there's this black curtain thing behind you, okay? There was one year where you had to pay for that. And I showed up, I was moving in the day before, and I didn't see curtains. Some people had curtains, other people didn't. And I was like, well, maybe they just haven't gotten around to it yet. Set up all my stuff, and I didn't want to hang my banner until the curtain was there, because it's like if I hang the banner now, they're going to have a problem hanging their curtain. So I went over to exhibit manager or whatever and was like, hey, when will you guys be done hanging curtains? And they're like, oh, did you pay for a curtain? Like this is, and it was like $40 just to have like that visual divider. So Fan Fusion has a long tradition of trying to figure out a way to get 10, 20, 50, 100 more bucks out of everybody, you know. Go ahead, Keith.
My question is whether it's Fan Fusion. I think it's the convention center.
It's the con, yes.
Yeah.
It's not even specifically Fan Fusion.
So no. I will say that my sixth subplot in this is that, I mean, look, the athletic competition I'm going for at the end of the month, beginning of July, is a fencing competition, right? My kid is fencing. And there is a convention center here when they host stuff. They say no outside food or drink. And it's like, sometimes you'll get a security guard who doesn't understand the policy and does not let fencers in with food or drink. Okay. These are athletes that need food or drink to perform.
Yes.
So, you know, like it, again, so it'll be fascinating. Like, you know, like, I don't care about me. Like, I can walk outside and go get some food somewhere, but like, and I don't want to get preemptively angry, but like, you better not have a single problem with my kid bringing in like energy bars, bananas, and Gatorade so that she can perform at the highest level, you know? So, you know,
well, that's how we felt as exhibitors. We felt like, look, you can, and by the way, I don't even agree with them doing this with the guests, because I think the most important aspect of this expensive problem is, and this is something I've talked about for years, ever since I've been starting to do Fan Fusion. People are paying $20 for parking, $50 to get in. You're getting a $7 water, a $15 hot dog. Like, they are bled dry before they even find your table in the back of the floor. You know, like, this is why, like, if I was king, and I understand they have a different agenda. They're trying to make all their money off of just saying we're open. They're not like us showing up saying, like, we got to break even at some point throughout this. Phoenix Fan Fusion wants to be able to say they're in the black a week before the show opens, you know? Or like, they're not in that game of hope we make money like we are. I get it. But if I were king, to get in, it'd be $10 a day. You know, parking, whatever. I don't have any control of the parking. Parking garages are going to set whatever they set, but people can light rail in. They can lift in. Like, they don't necessarily have to park down there. $10 to get in, and let's not gouge people on ham sandwiches. Like, come on. Like, leave money so they can buy stuff. You know, that's what we're all here for, right?
You want to have a convention that is like creator friendly, vendor friendly.
Yes.
And by having a cheaper entry point and like allowing people to bring in food if they want to, have the option to, at least. Some people won't. They're like, fuck it, I'll just buy something there. It's not a big deal, right?
I'm not gonna, bag of lunch, you know, like that. Who's going to do that?
That's their choice. You're leaving it up to them. So you're being like fan friendly, and you're being vendor friendly. Like, let's have the vendors make as much money as possible. So if we're not forcing them to buy our $7 waters or $20 sandwich, then okay, they have more money to spend at the table, and that'll make my vendors happy, and they'll want to come back, you know.
And by the way, we're not being hyperbolic when it comes to $7 waters and $20 sandwiches. There's a con. If you've never been to a convention, there is a con economy that I've talked about many times where everything is twice as much as you think it should be.
It's like the airport.
Yes, that's a good example.
Captive
it's like
audience.
The airport. Everything is like
whatever you want.
It's just and even when it comes to merch, like you'll see, like we all I think price our products very fairly, but you'll see people with prints and stuff they're selling for $80, where you're like, what the hell, man? Like what are, and it's because it's con economy, like that people will pay it. People will pay it.
I think that could dovetail to your second one, the print con, anime con, not a comic con.
Yes.
Strangely, this was better than last year. Like Keith and I were talking about, and we were probably talking with you too, because you were there one of the days, was that this is a print show now, and it was an anime show. It was just like everyone around us was selling anime. We were the weirdos in the room. We were the ones that had the American comics or the monster comics, and like everyone else was just like pushing manga or anime. And this year was better. It wasn't great. It definitely wasn't a comic convention, but it was definitely a lot better. There was a lot more diversity. Just so you guys know, I have a hard out in 4 minutes. So at 1 o'clock.
4 minutes. Okay. Well, I want to chime in this one part that you'll appreciate because you heard it too. I think on this topic, I think this sums it up. So one of Keith's go to kind of engage a customer lines, at least for those 2 days he was there, were, hey, you like comics? Like he would say that. And Keith, now tell me if I'm inflating this. I felt like a full 75% of people would say no. Just no. Like, I don't like comics. And then you started having to pivot to, all right, so are you here for the art or for the comics? Like, because I think you quickly felt out like nobody's here for comics. Like,
which I stole from Scott. Yeah, that's Scott's line that I have co-opted. The not necessarily an off ramp, but
just to avoid getting a no. Like, exactly. I mean, it's just like sales 101, like get them saying yes. If you've already, like the first question you're asking, do you like comics? No, I do not like comics. Okay, well, fuck off then. Like, I don't know what to say. Like,
that's why I ask it. Because if they don't like comics, then I don't need to waste my breath. Like, I pitch so much at shows that if I don't have to talk to you, we can end this conversation. So
Bye.
Because the way my process is, any kind of eye contact. Hey, how's it going? Good. Do you like comics? And then so we're in a place, and then like if they go good and they just start walking away, okay, well then I guess we're done.
There you go.
But if they give me a second, then that means you feel comfortable enough with me to have a conversation, and then I can ask you this question. It's a very important question to what I'm doing here at this show. And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, you here for the art? Yeah, just here for the art, looking stuff. Right on, man. Have a good show. We're done. I've saved so much of my time. Like I'm polite about it, but I'm cutting to the action that I need to get me where I want to be. And so
I was watching, I wish I could remember this creator's name, but I was watching a YouTube show last night. They were talking about conventions. They were talking about this very topic, that it's like, there's a lot of these cons that aren't even really comic cons anymore. They're like pop entertainment cons. There is something else. And the guy said, I used to ask people, do you like comics? And they'll say no. And he's like, I've started to get a little snippy about it, where it's like, are you here against your will? Are you like, do you need help? Should I call somebody? Like, why are you here? But he's being ridiculous. I think, no, it makes perfect sense. This isn't about comics. And the last thing, and I know you got to go. I think it was on Saturday. It's like, I'm going to do a quick walk through Artist Alley and do a head count of indie creators. I want to see who are putting comics out. Now, we were lucky. It was the three of us in a row. And then the woman next to us, she also had a graphic novel. So that was like an intense little indie comic corner right there. But every other one, I estimated there were maybe a dozen indie creators in the whole show floor. Maybe about, with the exception of our weird aisle that had a lot, maybe one per aisle. There would be one guy who had like his and everyone else was prints or tchotchkes, like enamel pins and things, like weird things like that, but not books. So that's why I say the bad is like, it's, again, comparing to Arizona Comic Book Arts Fest, that was a Comic Con for comic enthusiasts. Everybody who was there likes comics. Everybody who's there is into indie comics. This is not the, my impression is like 25% of the people there care about comics.
There was some of the people there. Corey has a great comment too. There was some people there that their reaction was, "Hey, do you like comics?" They're like, "Of course I like comics. Why else would I be here?" And I stopped myself from saying, "You're the minority now." It's just like
right.
But that's always a great answer to hear. Is just like, that's what I'm here for. It's like, thank goodness I might have a chance here.
Yep, and that's I have a version of that on the giant monsters thing, where I say, "Do you like giant monsters?" Like, who doesn't? I'm like, "Oh, thank you, sweet Jesus." Like, okay. Okay.
All right, guys. Well, I'm out. This has been a blast. I saw under my name it says Second Shift Kickstarter is live. That is not true.
I was just about to say that's not true.
I didn't see that. I didn't like. I changed my name because I saw I had it was like Scott Lost Kickstarter crap, right? And then I was like, "Oh, no, just put the website there, just in case anyone wants to go find my book." So real quick before I get out, if you haven't heard, I do 2 books. Wanderers of Melisande is anthropomorphic dinosaurs versus humans. 1,000 years in the future, we start colonizing other planets and come across the planet Melisande, where the meteor never hit. So dinosaurs of that world survived and evolved. So it's 2 dominant species trying to coexist on one planet. And Keith, does that ever work out?
It never works.
It never works. And then Second Shift is minimum wage superheroes, people with normal 9-to-5s like you and I would have, and their second shift is being superheroes.
Both great books worth checking out, everybody. So if you're into indie comics, unlike most of the audience at Phoenix Fan Fusion, I would say you should absolutely chase him down and see what he's selling.
Yeah, right on. All right, well, thanks, guys. Gary, again, thank you for hosting us.
Of course.
You and Mary are a delight, and your house is very much Gary. Like, I walked in, and I was like, yeah, this is Gary's house. So
I want to dig into that next time. I was fascinated by that comment, and because again, I'm a fish in the ocean. I don't know what that means. So
it just has your aesthetic. It screams you. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
All right.
That's
I'll
good.
talk to you gentlemen later.
See you later.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm realizing my point 2 and point 3 are basically the same point, which is it's a print con, it's an anime con, it's a cosplay parade.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can speak for
Gary,
you. I said and I still believe even trying in my head, I don't think I've ever sold anything to a cosplayer. It's maybe unfair to throw them in that bucket, but every time I see a cosplayer come by, I don't even bother trying to pitch them anymore because I feel like they're a roving booth. Like they're a roving exhibitor. They're like not there to patronize anybody. They're there to be patronized, like they're, and so, and the floor it feels sometimes like it's half of them are cosplayers, which I know. And now in their defense, where the F would they put their wallet? But I mean, they're just not, that's not what they're there for. They're not going to carry it back.
That seems kind of a side. Yeah. Well, and Gary, how like, I hate to break this to you, but Phoenix is actually one of the better shows for comics.
See,
like that's what's crazy. Like
this is what's sad about the state.
When I did the first show and went home, I described Phoenix as one of the, at the time, it was actually one of the, in Keith's opinion, it was one of the 2 best conventions for comics, like 2 best cities for comics. And it's sort of fallen to maybe a second tier, like, but it in a couple years ago, it was lower. So what I see is it is working its way back. But I also think this is just like par for the course at these shows, like it's weird. You commented while we were at the table and you were like, Keith, I just feel like nothing sums up the state of comics today more than you asking people if they like comics at a comic convention and them saying no.
To me, that's the whole thing. But it also, and it's funny, Scott Circlin said a funny thing to me when we were at dinner so that was day 1, correct?
2. I think it was 2.
No, it would have been well, day 2. I mean, day 1 of the convention.
Oh, you're right. Day 1 of the show.
Because you left day 2. Yeah.
Evening 2. Yeah. Day 1 of the show.
So as soon as we met up with Scott Cirkland, I always have to emphasize with Scots. We have Scots everywhere. Scott Cirkland, he was like, so how's it going? And I said, it's great. I'm a little annoyed. And before I could explain why that was annoying to me, he was like, why? Because you won't be able to complain about it? Like, which is sort of like, because I've, for years now, been complaining about fan fusion, I think is kind of bullshit. Like, I do it, and I make money. And that's what's also, I think, absurd for a lot of people, where it's like, you're making money, right? You're selling books, right? And yes, maybe just because I'm me, it's like, but there's all these things that are very frustrating. Like, I feel throttled, you know, like I feel like if not for all this, I'm making money in spite of fan fusion. You know, they have erected all these obstacles. And I think all of us, I'm just going to throw the number out there, would be doing double the business if not for their shenanigans, you know, if not for their nonsense, you know, it's all that stuff where, but I guess that's sort of the part of the last thing, the bad for me, and this is a very personal thing, it's draining and exhausting. Like, I kind of went dark for a few days after, where it's like, I need to recharge my batteries. We've all talked about, either together or individually, where we think we are on the spectrum of extroversion to introversion. Mm-hmm. You two both describe yourselves as more on the extrovert side of the scale. I definitely
I'm an extrovertly introverted extrovert, according to the...
Or whatever, whatever the hell that means. I know that I'm very much more on the introvert side of the scale. I can rally, I can fake it, I can muster the energy and kind of do the thing for a few days, but it's depleting. And it's, I think, depleting for anyone. Like, we all hear it in our voice after 3 days. We all sound like we have con crud. We're all exhausted. We all kind of need to okay, I'm not going to do anything now for a day or two. But I especially, today was the first day where it's like, I think I'm ready to live stream. You know, that's how down I was. Not down. I wasn't in a funk, but I was just like, I just want nothing. I don't want to have to talk to anybody. You know, I am spent. So for me, cons take a lot out of me. I was thankful it was a 3-day show instead of a 4-day. Fan fusion has historically been 4. For my tastes, again, if I were king, it'd be $10 at the door and a 2-day show. Like, I think there's no reason a show needs to be longer than 2 days, in my opinion. But and that also is about my energy level, where I can do 2. Like, 2, I feel okay. After that, I'm like, all right, I'm over this. Like,
I mean, I am also in the, if I were co-king with Gary, that is exactly what I would do. You know, because here's what we know about fans at shows. And I don't think the first time you ever go to a show as a fan, you are going to understand this. You have a budget. I'm walking into a show with a budget.
Yes.
Might I go over that 10%? Yes. I might go over that budget 10%, but I'm not going over it much more. So what you tend to see at shows later in the show or later in the day for people that have 1-day badges is they want to look at cool stuff, but they spent all their money. So by that logic, if most fans, if not all fans, have a show budget, then why would you not just ask them to come in on Saturday, right? And do Saturday and Sunday, because they're spending that budget. And with the exception of with the exceptions of San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con, one day is enough to do almost every convention I've ever been to. Yeah, some might be 2-day conventions, but like, as big as Phoenix is, as much as there is to see, because no fan is a fan of everything, 1 day is going to be enough. And cons know this. Cons know this because they want to sell you a 3-day badge. You know, like, cons do everything they can to give you the full show badge. So yeah, it's kind of wild, right? Like, to see that come into effect, you know? So anyway, it's I totally agree with you. I think you can do it all in 2 days. You're not going to affect anybody, but who you're going to affect is some of the stakeholders, right? The convention center wants them as many days as possible so they can charge them parking and $7 waters and, all
3 days. They want 3 or 4 days of selling $7 waters instead of 2. Like, and that's also a good example. What I probably should have done is combine my point 2 and 3. And one of the points should be, all the decisions about the con are made to benefit the con. Not the vendors, not the guests.
Yeah.
Like when you look at any part of it, especially the stuff that doesn't make sense, it's like, why? It's like, because it's better for fan fusion. Like, it's not better for the people at tables. It's not better for the people who are showing up. It's only better for them.
And who was notoriously the worst at that was the Wizard World shows. Wizard World was the worst at that. And and you beat me to it with the pop-up. I'm like, who is that tastefully named gentleman?
Yeah, like there's something about this guy. I've never met him, but I bet he's handsome.
Yeah. It's just what a tasteful name.
Bravo. Yeah. So those were my bads. Did you have any other? Now yours, obviously, you had a unique experience where you were only there 2 of the 3 days.
Yeah. So for me, I guess the bad, it was exhausting, but more, it was just exhausting. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying there, right? Like, and it's more of like, I'm just not sure how much you can fight City Hall on this, like,
right.
So after all that said, Keith, Gary, and Scott, are you renewing next year? Like, of course we are. Like, we got to put our books somewhere, but
and what's frustrating is like, again, I'm just going to keep banging on about it. Like it's like your favorite ex-girlfriend, Arizona Comic Book Arts Festival. Going to bring it up again. Is cheap enough. Now I'm expecting them to raise their prices. Okay, for this coming one, but at least for their debut con, it was $50 a table, and it was an 8-foot table. Yeah, I really love the versatility and the flexibility and the creative options and having a ton of space to figure out like what do I want to do with my table this year. And what's a bummer about Fan Fusion is like I know like those days are behind me. There is no way I would do a table by myself at Fan Fusion ever again. And based on what I made this time, I could, but it would be like now a break-even thing as opposed to like making money, which is, and it's a bummer. It's a real bummer, because again, like I was talking to you guys about like one of my original ideas. If you look at, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you can probably see my profile image, and it's the Tyrannosaur with the little gray, like the cartoony Tyrannosaur with the gray being tossed in his mouth. I had for years thought I want to make a big sign where you can get these. They're actually fairly inexpensive. Put the gray on a little rotating motor, so he'll be like tumbling in the Tyrannosaur's mouth like this. Like all convention long, like people will beeline to see what the hell is going on at that table. And to do it like the way I envision, there's just no good way to do that, at Fan Fusion. I could do that at Comic Book Arts Fest. Like there's lots of things like that where it's like you have to be very kind of small footprint economical and like very thoughtful about how am I layering. Like you guys, especially every day, were like, because you have a lot more merch than me. Looking at it, it's like, what's the smartest way to lay out this table? And every morning it was kind of fun. It was like this ongoing experiment. Scott especially would be like, you know what? I think I'm going to put this here and then this over here. It's like this Tetris game. Every morning, like what is like a slightly more aesthetically pleasing spread? Yeah, that's what you have to do when you have finite space. Yeah. Now, maybe that makes your layout sharper. Like maybe that's good, but it also, I think, like I said, it confines your options. Yeah, you're not going to be able to. Yeah,
I think there's a couple things there. One, so like to your point, Scott and I actually had adjacent tables. We were, I think that's the word, and we were next to each other at Amazing Las Vegas, and we did well. And we profited. And yet when we were done, we were both like, why don't we just split next year? Because we
If
made
we had split,
but we
right.
could have made that much more. And that's what's nice too. We have now tabled together enough to know that the drop off, like there is not much of a drop off. Like I have done just as well at a show where I'm splitting a table with Scott. Like I made more money this year at WonderCon with half a table than I did with a full table the year before. So
Right.
you know, that's good information to know, because it's going to make you more willing to do that in the future. So I mean, I think it's and that's the reason I only do the shows I do. You know, I used to travel all over the place to try to spread the word, and now I pretty much just stick to, you know, the Pac-12, right? Like, or the
Right.
old Pac-12, right? Like just the West. It's California, it's Vegas, it's Arizona, and it's Oregon if I can get into a show there, Oregon or Washington if I can find the right table at the right price. But I also think that for me, the future that I hope to see is more Arizona Comic Art Fests. You know, I've already put my name in for a notification for that, and I desperately hope I get in, because
I hope so,
you know,
too. Yeah.
Would I? Is it possible I still do like what I would hope to do is do Arizona Comic Arts Fest and then do so well that I'm like, maybe we don't do Fan Fusion, guys. But the issue is I still want to do Fan Fusion because it's different fans. So
it's different
fans. It's about leveraging the profit, right?
And that's what that brings me back to why I told Scott Cirkland when I was like, it's going really well, I'm sort of annoyed about it. And he was like, why? Because he can't complain. And it was like, no, I wanted an excuse to never do it again.
Yeah.
Like I kind of wanted it to be middling, you know, where it's like I'm just kind of breaking even, where it's like, you know what, this doesn't make sense. And like and free myself of the burden. And the problem with like doing well is like, well, God damn it. You know, like now I like, you know, it's like it's kind of crazy to say, like, yeah, you know, I sold a bunch of books and made a bunch of money, but no, you know, like
you never go broke making a profit. You know, like as long as you're profiting, and in this case, like profiting a pretty decent amount after looking at all the costs, and we're having fun as a result. You know, like it's like we mentioned before, like it's not just that we're like that you're so gracious to let us stay with you. It's that makes it a better time. You know, like not fine. We'll split an Airbnb. We do that, you know, but like how much better is it to have one more friend there, you know, and then you
it's why
with them. Yeah.
You and I, like, I think from we started here. Well, I first remember hearing about it, the convention we met at, where people were talking about the Tucson show is really good. I keep hearing the Tucson show is good. Yeah. And I've always been intrigued. And that's not even a huge leap for me. That's only like about 2 hours south, like 2.5 hours south. But it's just far enough where I would have to get a place to stay. Like I wouldn't be able to drive, you know, there and back every day.
Exactly.
And having to come up with lodging is enough reason for me to have not done it. Because it's like, you know, it changes the risk. It changes the math. Like I don't know how it would go. I don't know if it's worth it. And if I'm paying even at a cheap Airbnb, it's very easily could become like a break even or lose money proposition. It's like, I don't need that. I don't like, I want safe bets, you know. I sell books on Etsy. I sell books privately. Like I don't need, you know, like it's like I'm sort of content, maybe too content, you know. I'm like, no, it's fine. I've got a little action. It's enough, you know, where I'm not like you guys where I'm hitting every show. You know, and like trying, I mean, it's not a big part of my life. So
I've really streamlined that, you know, and to Scott's point about, you know, the 3 price components, like for me, it's travel and lodging. I do not do shows anymore that are airfare and lodging. It can only be one. I can pay airfare to stay with a friend.
Yes.
Or I can drive and pay lodging, or sometimes you kind of get, you know, both of those things, right? Like you don't have to really do either. And those are the best, right? But in general, it's just, you know, and that goes back to kind of what you were talking about. The idea that, you know, you're doing well at a show. I mean, I think you, Scott, and I are going to have various feels about this, right? Because you sell only books. I sell mainly books, but a few prints that tie to my books. Scott
Yeah.
sells a blend of books and prints, right? Because
Right.
Scott is being an artist too. Scott, you know, like I think that's super cool that Scott gets to see a Spider-Verse movie and then be like, I want to draw something from this.
I'm going
You
to
know,
do
like
some
for me,
prints for that. Yeah.
yeah, I see a Spider-Verse movie and I'm like, I'm gonna have a beer. You know, like that's my inspiration, right?
Hold on
So,
one second.
and I think, yeah,
Wait, I'm sorry to you have the show for a second. I need to step away just for a second. So
sounds good.
pitch, talk, whatever you want to do. I'll be back in
Pitch
2
talk.
minutes.
Well, I'll continue my point. Yeah, yeah. So I think for me, hey, party people, it's just Keith now. This is like a radio takeover. I think it creates a hard ceiling, right? It's this nature of a hard ceiling to what you are doing when the more you sell books and don't couch it with anything else, the more you see that hard ceiling, the more you're like, this is really like the best I can ever do at a show. And that's what's I can't queue up the chat because I don't have those kind of superpowers. But yeah, Keith Harper is like just Keith. It's all the Keiths. Like the Keiths are taking this over right now, and that's the best part. So so for me, it's always this function of you can sort of feel the hard ceiling coming of like, I feel like there's only so many comic fans here, and I have spoken to all of them, and they've either bought something already or they're going to come back, right? So hey, look, I'll talk a little bit about the books I do, and then that way we don't have to do this when I sign off. But I do a couple. I do Kadoja, which is Giant Monsters Meet H.P. Lovecraft. In fact, I actually just got my Kickstarter copies of the second issue of Symphony of Madness in. So I'm excited for that. That is my 16th overall issue. No, 17th overall issue. So we're kind of going to the end here. And I also do a book called Three Protectors, which is Kung Fu in space. So sci-fi, but with a Kung Fu twist. And I have a horror book coming out. It's going to be in your local comic shop. All you have to do is ask your retailer about it, called Animals. And it is, animals get a virus that makes them savage and makes them want to murder humans. And so the first issue of that comes out in about a month.
I'm very much looking forward to Animals. After all this build-up, I've been hearing you talk about it for so long. And
well, that's the fun, Gary. Like that's the fun of the journey that you take people along with this live stream, right? Or the fact that we've, this might be the first comic, Gary, for you that I have seen from start to finish, right? I think when we first picked up, when we first met each other, you were working on the second issue. So it is fun. I mean, it's fun, but it's also kind of weird, right? Like, it's this idea of, you spend years doing this and it's going to take someone, 15 minutes if you're lucky to read it. And by the way, I read it. I finally read it the other day. It is excellent. It is so
thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So no, I'm thrilled. I appreciate the shout out at the end. The
thank
you.
Of course.
Much appreciated, man. But yeah.
So no, I appreciated your help with it. And as I said in the thank you, just having you guys as friends through the whole process. I think people have gotten from watching these streams. I think maybe the most important thing a creative can do is form some sort of community. Like you need to have other creatives you can relate to. They don't even have to be doing the same thing. Like if you're a comic person, other comic people are great, but whatever. Find a photographer that you get along with. Find a writer, find a painter, find a hairstylist. Like whatever. Someone who kind of understands that lifestyle, that approach, that kind of the thoughts and the concerns and the struggles and everything else. It's desperately, desperately important, I think. And you guys are part of that for me. So I appreciate it.
Hey, man. Happy to be a part of this crazy crew we call.
I know. Me too. So Jim had I may have missed it if you mentioned, but how does conventioning affect you physically, both while you're there and afterwards? Keith, would you like to go first or should I?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, you sort of answered this, right? I mean, I think okay, so convention, I almost look at it as it is linear no matter what happens, so while I'm there, you're always going to start with more energy, with the most energy, and then it's just going to go down and down and down and down. And for me, the reason is if the convention is dead and you're sitting there watching people walk by or watching a few people walk by, it is draining. It is draining to just have some people there and have nothing to talk about. Yeah. If you are busy, the exact opposite, and a lot of people are at your booth, it is draining, right? Like it ends in draining. And it's, the good news is it goes really fast, but it's really draining.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, like by the time I am doing a Saturday night ramp down, I am beat. And Scott and I, you'll have to dig for it a little bit for those of you that listen to Making Comics, but we made the mistake of recording one on the Saturday night of Amazing Las Vegas. And we sounded so goddamn dead. And look, I'm proud of the episode, but you could feel the low energy at the beginning, and then through the episode, our energy picked up again just by talking about comics and things. But my God, my voice was shot to hell, and it was definitely like go out there in the fourth quarter while being dehydrated and go ahead and do this podcast.
It is you can't miss it. Like if you listen to it, there's a marked difference from any other one. But you know what? I think it's also very important for people to hear. I think it's Josh Campbell was talking in a recent stream. I don't know if it was his latest one or maybe the one prior. He was talking about how maybe creatives are a little too coy about the grind and the toil and how much work it actually is to do what we're doing. Like that maybe we're not serving young would-be creatives if we're going on to our streams or whatever and being like, finished another comic, guys, it's pretty awesome, hope you read it, like the finger, like
comics,
exactly, where you could give people the impression that like if this isn't easy and fun and no big deal for you, like something's wrong with you. And like maybe you need to show like, no, actually this is a lot of work, and there are days you're not happy and there are days you're frustrated and there are days you're tired. I think conventioning, it's the same thing. I think it might be important. Like I could imagine someone, they signed up for the first Artist Alley table and now they're terrified they're going to lose money on this and they're exhausted after day one and there's 2 or 3 days left and they're like, this is a disaster. Like, and they don't realize this is the universal con experience, guy. Like, this is what it is. Do not feel bad. Do not worry. Do not pick yourself. What did I like? There's always room for improvement. And that's what we spent most of the show talking about, like the learnings and therefore what would you do different next time? But no, it's a grueling slog, even in the best case scenario. And maybe it's important that people know that.
And to speak to the afterwards, so I fly home Saturday. I see my family. I wake up Sunday. I'm doing Monsterpalooza on my own. I have a nice day. I close down the table. I wheel out all the stuff to the car. I have some food on the way home. The food tasted so delicious because I had just subsisted on snacks. And we're talking like Panda Express. Don't get me wrong. Really good Panda Express.
Right.
It felt like water at the end of a desert, when I was eating it. And then I got home. My wife and family was out at a family party. And I just sat in a chair. I sat there.
Yeah.
That was it. I did for an hour. I just sat in a chair. And then in terms of the extended afterwards, it really took me about 2 days before I felt like writing again or even looking at any of my stories. It's just like I just needed a day and a half of just complete nothing. Enjoy the moment, relive the moment, but also just like, God, I can't think about anything. So for me, it's the energy goes down through the whole convention. And then usually the final night, the Sunday is just like, oh man, I'm so beat. And then you're going to need a couple days to get ready to actually want to make stuff again.
Yeah. Well, and like I said earlier, I think before Jim popped back in, up to and including last night, I was asking myself if I was up for streaming today. Like if I really, like that's where I'm still kind of in that recovery period. And I decided I was up for that. but I still feel like I am battling. Like I think maybe I got a touch of con crud or something. I don't know if people can hear it in my nose. Like and I'm a low energy. I don't feel great. I'm spent. And to your point about the food, Sunday, Scott and I finally got out of there, and this was like 5 o'clock or something, 6 o'clock, and he had to drive all the way back to San Diego. So we wanted to get food, but we wanted something kind of quick because we had to get back and load up his car and and he had a long drive ahead of him. So it's like, what's something we can do that's fairly quick, but also good, and also something he can't get at home. Like that's always the thing. Like what's something, so I'm not going to say like, let's go to In-N-Out. Like what's something that, So we hit Culver's, and I hadn't had it in a while, so I'm sure that's a part of it. But I was having a double cheeseburger, a double, like their butter burger or whatever they call it, double bacon cheeseburger, and some crinkle cut fries. And at that moment, it was the best hamburger I've ever had in my life. Like just because I was coming off of 3 days of just you're eating trail mix at the table, it's just and you're exhausted and you haven't had like a lot of real food, and oh my god, it was magic. I'm still thinking about it. It's
I think you're talking me into burgers for lunch actually. So
do it. Highly recommend it.
I got Farmer Boy, which is like Farmer Boys is like the Culver's of California, and I've got a 4-minute drive from my house. So I'm heavily weighing Farmer Boys as an option right now.
Yeah, Scott shared some of his cheese curds with me.
Oh, nice.
Culver's has deep fried cheese curds.
Yeah. No, I
I was like, I could have a bowl of these. Like this is I could just sit here and just like nonstop until I had a heart attack right here at the table. So no, it was good. But for my response to that, I think for me, the biggest drain, there's a little bit of physical drain to it. At least me personally, I'm getting up a little bit earlier than I normally get up. It's a long day. It's a 9-hour day. And you are on all day. Like it's not like your day job maybe where nothing's going on and you're sitting at your desk or you have a lunch break or, something like that. Like you are for 9 hours, you're kind of planted in a spot. And the only real variation you're getting is I'm going to stand for a little while. I'm going to sit for a little while. I'm going to stand for a little while. I'm going to sit for a little while, or I'm going to go fill up my water bottle, but that's about it. Yeah. I find most of my exhaustion is emotional. It's from being on and talking and engaging with people and being kind of like pleasant, like even though you're tired, even though you're not into it, even though you're frustrated, whatever is going on in that particular moment, you're not putting that on the customer, or a potential customer. Someone's coming by and you're always like, hey, how's it going? Like you're always having to get that energy 9 hours a day, while living on trail mix and caffeine. Yeah, totally. It's by the end of it, I'm wiped out. And that's why, I'm still kind of just coming out of it.
Totally.
All right.
Yeah, I'm probably going to bounce anyway. So it sounds
I think we did 2.5 hours. That was a pretty thorough analysis of how Fanfusion went.
And like Scott, dude, thank you so much for not only having me on this live stream, but also, letting me be a guest at your place, man. It was great. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you Mary, so much.
No, and as someone who conventions, it just felt like, you can't, like if they can stay here, like why, like that's, it just makes their lives so much easier,
it was awesome.
Like I would never con out of state unless I could crash with someone. Like I would just never do
you got a home here. If you want to do WonderCon, you ever want to do WonderCon or Ontario Comic Con? We'll
there we go. Yeah, and then I'll continue to look at Tucson
too. We got that writer retreat. We have the writer retreat.
Writer retreat for sure, because especially since now I'm pivoting to writer phase. Yeah, writer Gary is awakening. So I hope, this was helpful or interesting, or ideally both, for people who are watching either live or on the replay. Thank you very much, Dee Dee. I think that gives you a fair picture of the Phoenix Fan Fusion experience, at least. But otherwise, so I'm assuming you plugged while I was away, but here's a last chance if you want to remind anybody where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Keith_invader, or you can go to my website, which is keithrfoster.com. And yeah, the super quick version again: Kadoja, giant monsters meet H.P. Lovecraft, 3 protectors, kung fu in space. Animals are trying to kill you.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
A nice counterbalance for DvsM 1979, where, you know, it's something a little more tender about animals, maybe, a sort of a sweeter story about animals, and then you can have like the other side of it. So for me, in the description, you'll see I have a link to my Etsy shop. All 3 DvsMs are in stock and available. Stock is lower because I had a pretty good con, and I have had pretty steady and good Etsy sales, but there are still some available. One of the there's all 3 are available. So if you're interested in DvsM, be sure to check it out. And then in addition, I haven't decided on a date yet, but in the foreseeable future, next few weeks probably, I'm going to be doing another Ask Me Anything, which I typically do for every comic release. So if you have a question about anything, me, my work before DvsM, my DvsM work, if you have specific questions about a specific DvsM, whatever, ask me anything. I have an email, my Gmail in the description. Send it if you want. Just so you know, I'll be bringing this up every stream until I do it. I will not mention your name unless you say you can use my name. Like, all questions will be anonymous unless you say use my name. Just because I would rather err on the caution of anonymity, err on the side of anonymity than this person asked this, and like maybe they, for whatever reason, didn't want their name on it. So if you have a question, ask as many questions as you want. I don't care if there's not too many. Just let me know if like you do want your name mentioned. By default, again, I will not mention your name. It'll be an anonymous question. Okay. And I think that's it for this week.
All right.
I don't know what next week will be. All right. See you later, Keith.
All right, later.
Let's see. Anything else? Anything else? Anything else? I think that's it. So Ask Me Anything is coming up. Start getting your questions in now. I will be asking for questions for the next few weeks until I feel like I have an adequate pile and I'm ready to go. My next order of business is the character creation and analysis video of Dr. Veronica Wagner, the main character of DvsM 1979. If you circle back to my channel, I've already done a video for Jenny Burke, the main character of DvsM 1997, and Ruben Garcia, the main character of DvsM 1975. Now, every comic will have one main character, and I will do a video talking about, well, it mostly will be about that character, how I came up with them, the different versions I went through before I got to the final version, talking about their role in the story, backstory stuff that you wouldn't get from the comic, all that kind of thing. But also I'll be talking, just as by necessity, DvsM 1979 more generally in that video. What are the ideas I wanted to put in there? What's going on just outside of the panel for this story, et cetera, et cetera. So look forward to that. That's also an opportunity with my Ask Me Anything email. If you have specific questions about Dr. Wagner or DvsM 1979, I might hold on to them for the Dr. Wagner video. Just so you know. So if you submit a question that's very 79 related or very Dr. Wagner related, and I don't cover it in the Ask Me Anything, it's probably because I'm holding on to it for the Dr. Wagner video. That all makes sense? Get your questions in. I always enjoy the questions, and historically, gotten some really good, fun, interesting ones. I will see you all next week. Topic TBD. I don't know. Hope you all have a nice weekend. Take care of yourselves and each other. See you next time.